Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Caleb averages 4 rebounds a game. Lance Jones, 3 more for the left wing.
He has been dynamite this second half.
17 points for Lance.
Bruce Brown has it. He'll lob it back up top. Halliburton working off a Turner screen. Horford switches out. Halliburton bouncing and looking and launching and scoring! 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 And a foul! A 3-ball and a foul!
3 receivers right, 1 out to the left. 5-man rush. Browning throws it deep downfield for Chase. Over the shoulder catch. He's off to the races at the 20, the 10, and he will back his way into the end zone for the Bengals touchdown. Brad Robbins ready to hold. Cal Adamitis ready to snap. Adamitis fires it back. Robbins puts it down. The kick is on its way. It is good.
Yeah, baby.
And so just really proud of Jake and the job he did. And the guys rallying around and making plays for him, protecting him, run game getting going. It all helped Jake. And, really, really proud of the team win, but really proud of Jake in his second career start to come out here on Monday Night Football and do what he did today is pretty cool.
Good morning. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I was really expecting a larger beat drop than that, but that's okay. We're here on a Tuesday morning at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi Lulla. The guy to my left is not Andrew Rogers. It is Connor Kavulak.
Kavulak. Like Cadillac.
So close. You literally just told me that.
Oh, it's
Connor Kavulak. I will get that right twice today, probably. He is from the No Block, No Rock podcast on the Hurrdat Sports Network. Connor, how are you this morning?
Oh, I'm living the dream, Robbie. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. We are, just getting ready here on a Tuesday. We've got a nice show for you this morning. Coming up at 8 o'clock, we'll have Michael Severe. He runs the Jet Foundation. They award the National Returner of the Year right here in Omaha. I believe the event is right here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Shane? Do we know?
Sorry, I think you're right.
Okay, he's all right.
I think you are right. I think it is here.
Yeah, I believe it is here, and so I believe you can get tickets and hang out, and like Adrian Martinez is going to be there, of course. Johnny the Jet Rogers will be there. It's going to be a terrific event. And so Michael Severe will join us to give us some of those details that I'm apparently a bit fuzzy on, even though I'm sure someone has told me multiple times. We will also talk to Kerry Miller at 8:45, talk a little college basketball, big college basketball this past week, a lot going on there. And then we will talk to Mike J. Schaefer at 9 a.m. Lots going on in the portal, in recruiting, all sorts of stuff going on there. We will also do Hurrdat Hot Seat, which is going to be particularly fun because Connor and I know each other almost zero, basically. Yeah. We've met a couple times.
Yeah, we got to have you on the podcast, which was awesome.
I was over on NBNR. I think when I did the pregame, you weren't there.
Yeah, no, you're correct. I've
gotten to know you a little bit less than the other NBNR guys. So Hurrdat Hot Seat will be fun because it's more fun when you don't know the person. You can just ask them random stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be a good time here. You can always give us a call on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. It's 888-638-4876. That's the show we've got planned for you. It's going to be a good time as we get Connor initiated here on. I'm also going to do – just a heads up. I didn't really tell you this, but we're going to get to know you a little bit. A little bit. So, because, I also don't know you. So
no, that's fine. That is fine.
We'll figure it out as we go along here. But I wanted to start off with, obviously, it is transfer portal season here. There's a lot going on. We've got some names now in the quarterback transfer portal of guys that Nebraska is at least talking to. The names that we've heard so far, there apparently was a Will Howard meeting. I don't know how realistic that is as an option, but there was a Will Howard meeting. from Kansas State. If that were to happen, I think the state would rejoice as if we had won a bowl game.
Oh, 100%.
Sam Leavitt, the freshman out of Michigan State, there's apparently mutual interest there. Satterfield was up in East Lansing talking to him. He's, I believe, planning a trip. It hasn't made the trip yet to Lincoln. And then a name that came out as well is Blake Shapen from Baylor. You know, they love those Baylor connections with Coach Rule and staff. As I say those names to you, Connor, what are your reactions?
The only one that I get super, super excited about is Will Howard.
Well, sure. Yeah.
I mean, that obviously I'm not alone in saying I'm excited about Will Howard.
Yeah. That's I mean, he's one of the best on the market.
Absolutely. Leavitt is one that concerns me. And we talked about this last night a little bit on NBNR, is in his career, he's thrown 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. Mm-hmm. Sure, I'm positive the kid has potential, but have we seen the production yet? The answer is no. And then Blake Shapen, again, you talk about, you know, the Baylor connection. I think there is some decent interest there, but it's not one that I'm going to go to bat for. Obviously, you talk about all these other big names that have hit the portal. Nebraska has said that we have the money. We will spend it. You talk about McCord or any of these other big names, Cam out of Washington State. Why not go and, while unrealistic, let's go spend that money and see if we can go grab one of these big names.
So here's my, I guess, I don't think Cam Ward's coming.
No, he's not.
I think I think he might end up at Florida State. I don't know. That's one of the teams on his list, and just kind of looking at his skill set, looking at what Jordan Travis did this year, I'm like, Cam Ward at Florida State would be a little scary.
Yeah,
that would be good for them. I guess. How much do you worry about? Because this is something that I think about with typical recruiting, high school recruiting a lot. You know, we heard it a lot about with Danny Kalin, where he was pretty clearly Nebraska's second option in the class after Raiola. And he's like, they made it clear I wasn't a backup option. And I was like, did they? Because for like the last 6 months, they made it pretty clear you were the second option.
Yeah.
But whatever. It is what it is. Like, if you can't accept the fact that you were the second option behind the top recruit in the country, then you've got other problems. Yeah. But I wonder how much of that exists in the transfer portal, where it's like, hey, you know, we missed with Dylan Gabriel, and we missed with Will Howard, and we missed with Cam Ward, and that's why we landed on you. You know, like, I wonder how much of that, because, like, everybody's got an ego, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think in the portal, these guys, I'm very pro player. I have always been pro transfer portal. I get a lot of hate for that. I'll never back down from it. I think these guys in the portal are a little bit less ego motivated, maybe money motivated, but ultimately playing time and success motivated. They're going to try and find the university that's going to give them their best opportunity to hit the league the next year. I'm not looking at, I mean, there are some candidates in there like Leavitt out of Michigan State that would give you a few years of experience, but a lot of the guys that I would be targeting are essentially one and dones. Get some success, and what I've said for a long time is success breeds success. Mm-hmm. Get a good QB in that room, get some success there, and then you're going to start getting higher-end QB recruits that show, oh, hey, it can be done at Nebraska. I can go there for 4 years and succeed. So I don't know that it's necessarily an ego thing in the portal. So getting down to, you know, you were our second, third, maybe even fourth choice in this portal, I don't see that being a huge issue, but certainly something to look at.
How can I sell you on, because I actually think this guy's more realistic than maybe some of the other top guys. For some reason, I can't get over, like, I feel like DJ Uyunglele is like on the table.
I have heard so much that he is interested in Nebraska. Maybe not like he's coming here tomorrow.
Right, but like that there's at least some curiosity there.
I don't think it's a hard sell for me.
Like, he's good.
Yeah, it's not a hard sell for me.
Especially, I mean, compared to what Nebraska's got in the room, right?
Yeah.
He's good. He's a good football player. And people get kind of a weird taste in their mouth about the Clemson thing. They were 11-3 with him as their starter. They just went 8-4 with Cade Klubnik, who was supposed to be like Clemson Jesus. Like, he was supposed to save him, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking here at DJU, and I was like, well, he put up pretty good numbers at Clemson. He put up good numbers at Oregon State. Like, we sure that –
why would you not be taking a look?
We sure that because I think DJU's on the table. Now, if I'm taking a swing at somebody outside of Will Howard, but I think DJU is kind of the guy that I would take a swing at.
Again, like everybody and their mom is taking a swing at Will Howard right now.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like
what? Like that attention is not over on DJU right now.
That's what I mean. He's kind of people forget about him a little bit. Like Dylan Gabriel made a huge splash going into the portal, right? He's going to go to like USC or Oregon or one of these places and whatever. That's fine.
Yeah.
Riley Leonard's going to Notre Dame. Will Howard, everybody wants.
Everyone.
Cam Ward, everybody wants. Kyle McCord's the guy that I would look at because I don't know that people are enamored with him, though he was good this year.
Yeah. Do you not think he'll get that same attention?
I'm not as those top 4 guys.
I think McCord will ultimately.
You think so?
Like, I think he'll get around there.
Because
I mean, he's not going to surpass Cam Ward, but.
No, I think people are going to look at like a Dante Moore, the 5-star out of UCLA.
Yeah. And
get kind of, they kind of get their rose-colored glasses on with these guys that. It's kind of the same thing that a lot of us are doing with Sam Levitt is, well, we haven't seen that much of him yet. He was a 4-star. Like, maybe he's good. Which, to be fair, I'm okay with them bringing in Sam Levitt if he's not the only guy they bring in. Like, I'm okay if he's the developmental guy. It's like, hey, we're going to bring in like a 1-year. Another guy that I really like that I've said a bunch of times is Grayson McCall.
Yep.
If you want to do like a 1-year deal with Grayson McCall and have Sam Levitt kind of be the backup there and then take over next year because he's got 4 years eligibility left.
Yep.
That's a dude that I could definitely see that happening with. But you're not going to get these you're not going to get the attention on those guys that like a Dante Moore is going to get. I'm also kind of intrigued by the 5-star kid out of Georgia, Brock Vandegrift, excuse me. He has played, I think, 0 football basically. But he was, I mean, listen, maybe I'm just getting a little like star drunk here, but I mean, he was a 5-star.
He had very little. He threw 21 passes for 165, but he got 2 touchdowns with it.
Yeah, I mean, in his entire career, in 3 years, he's thrown 21 passes, so there's not a ton there, but it's okay. He wasn't taking the last 2 years. He wasn't taking snaps away from Stetson Bennett.
Exactly.
And then this year, obviously, Beck took over. I look at him and I go, I mean, maybe. He was a 5-star for a reason. Maybe you take a sniff around there. He's still got, I think, 3 years of eligibility left, or at least 2. Maybe. Exactly.
You got to think he's got at least 2.
Yeah, I mean, he's a redshirt sophomore. He didn't have the COVID year, so he should have 2. He should have 2.
And coming out of Georgia, he's a lot younger for a QB than I would have thought. He's only 21.
That's what I mean. Like,
yeah.
So that's a guy I would take maybe a look at. I like some of these high upside guys, but I do want, and this is where Blake Shapen comes in.
Yep.
Or a guy like Blake Shapen comes in because his numbers are actually pretty solid. He's been mostly a starter for the last couple years. He out of Baylor, he's over 60% completion percentage, which I know Satterfield wants that number a little higher than that. But his touchdown interception ratio over his career is 36-13. I mean, that's a number we would all die for at this point.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, if you're not throwing 13 in a season, we'd be thrilled.
Yeah.
And to actually have an almost 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio would be awesome. I guess Blake Shapen doesn't really get me excited.
Kind of a milquetoast QB. Like, and I don't say that like he's bad, but
because he's almost certainly an upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's not. It's not one of. I'm actually would be more. I would need a young guy to be excited about if Blake Shapen gets here too. Like it would need to be Blake Shapen and either like a Brock Vandegrift or a Sam Levitt.
I was going to ask if Levitt could be combined into that.
Yeah, I'd be okay
you're
with
still
that.
asking for a lot to try and get both of those guys, but
I think they're going to do 2 though. I
don't know why you wouldn't.
And it sounded like from some of the comments that I heard, and these might mostly be rumors. Some of them. It's hard to figure out what people are saying on the record and off the record sometimes, but it sounds like Sam Levitt's okay with not being the only guy taken in a transfer portal class, is what I've heard. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but maybe he understands kind of the pecking order of, I can sit and learn for a year and then still start for 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And that'd be okay. So that would be, I'd be okay with a I mean, I'd like a higher end than Schaefer if I'm being honest here.
Yeah.
Like if I could get a DJU and a Sam Levitt, I'd be over the moon.
Absolutely.
I'd lose my mind. That would be an incredible combination to get here. Or even a Grayson McCall. A Grayson McCall and a Sam Levitt? Absolutely. Like sign me up for that tomorrow.
Easily.
Is there a guy that we haven't talked about yet? Because I'm obviously pretty obsessed with the transfer portal quarterbacks. It's how I spend an inordinate amount of my free time. Is there anybody we haven't talked about yet that you are interested in?
Not really, if I'm being honest. We talked about Riley Leonard a little bit. Riley Leonard is not coming here.
He's going to Notre Dame.
Yeah,
if he doesn't go to Notre Dame, he's more tied to Notre Dame than Sam Hartman was tied to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And we knew that was happening the whole time.
Did we talk about Dylan Gabriel?
A little bit. I mean, obviously I'd love him, but he's not coming to Nebraska.
Yeah. There are guys that I'm interested in, but doesn't mean they're coming here. No.
I think the highest level guy that I think Nebraska has a realistic shot at, I do think there is a shot at Will Howard.
I think there's a real shot.
Apparently I've been told that Adrian Martinez has been doing some peer recruiting there.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And I would take Will Howard. Shoot, I would take Adrian Martinez again at this point.
Oh my Lord. Yeah.
So I do think I wouldn't bet on it, but I do think there's a shot with Will Howard. The highest guy that I think Nebraska actually has a shot with is DJU. Like that.
Yeah. And I wouldn't hate that. And I would be over the moon.
Yeah. It's not just wouldn't hate that. I would be thrilled.
Yeah.
With DJ. Like that would be, because we'll do the stats real quick here on DJ, because I think people have this perception of him in their head that is not accurate. First of all, enormously talented. He was a 5-star kid coming out, but he has been a little bit less accurate than you would want, about right at 60% for his career, but he's a 57-24 touchdown to interception ratio guy for his career, which is terrific. And he's been hugely productive. He's got over 8,000 passing yards in his career. Like, he's a guy that if you don't ask him to do too much, I think you can feel really good about. He also has 6 rushing touchdowns last year, 21 total rushing touchdowns for his career. He's 6'4", 250. He's a big boy. Dude. I think if you don't ask him to do too much, he can be even better than what we've seen him be. And I know that's weird to be like, yeah, we've got a former 5-star kid that we don't want to ask to do too much. But you want to, I think with Clemson, they expected him to be Trevor Lawrence.
Which just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, nobody was Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was better in college than Deshaun Watson was.
Yeah.
That was an unrealistic ask of DJ.
Of anyone.
Yeah, to be Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
And so, and I think I think they realize that now with Cade Klubnik, they're like, oh, get rid of this DJ guy. And it's like, oh, well, Cade Klubnik's only okay too. So I think expectations kind of got the better of him a little bit. Has he produced like a 5-star? Maybe not, but he produces like he would get Nebraska 3 more wins than they had this year.
Reducing turnovers is going to get you at least 2 more.
Yeah. I mean,
at least 2 more.
Honestly, I think Chubba would have got Nebraska 2 more wins this year if he had started the whole year. I think Minnesota and I think Maryland, if he had played that whole game, they probably win those.
For sure.
And so it's like, hey, we're at 7. It's fine. DJU's better than both of those guys or any of those guys in that room by far.
Yes, 100.
Not even. I think I think Sam Levitt's better than any of those guys in that room.
Yeah, this is not me dogging the current Nebraska quarterback room, but there's a reason why everyone in the state of Nebraska is looking at the portal right now. There's a reason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's not just a reason, but it's justifiable. Anytime you play 3 quarterbacks and none of them are super impressive, you have to look at other options.
Yeah.
That's a thing that you have to do. I'm curious though about Chubba Purdy, because I was thinking about this as I was driving in this morning for some reason, probably because I can't stop thinking about quarterbacks. If he hadn't thrown the interception against Iowa, even if Nebraska loses, let's say they go to overtime and lose, if he hadn't thrown that interception against Iowa, how much differently do we feel about him?
I think I still would be kind of in the same boat where I would be okay at its max with Chubba as a QB2 next season. I'm not out on Chubba.
I'm not either.
Yeah, I'm not out on Chubba. I hope he does not ultimately hit the portal this season. That is something I am concerned about, knowing, he hasn't had much playing time. Nebraska hasn't historically treated him all that well.
Although I think better with this staff than the last staff.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I mean, I think that can be said across the board about just about every player that's come through Nebraska is better with this staff than the last staff.
Yeah. But I would like to see Chubba stay. And I think, if we don't go and get 2 QBs in this portal, Chubba is a reasonable QB2, if not a QB3.
Yeah. I want, because I don't know how feasible it is for him to leave because he's already transferred.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he's on pace to graduate. Like Jeff Sims, I think, is on pace to graduate in the spring. So we probably won't see him enter the portal now. We'll probably see him enter the portal in May after he's graduated.
Sure.
I haven't heard that about Chubba Purdy. Obviously, I'm not like looking at his transcripts or anything, but I don't know that that's true about Purdy. So unless he wants to drop down to FCS, which I don't know that that's appealing to him, his best bet might be to stick it out another year, fight for the quarterback job, and try and graduate so that if he wants to take another shot somewhere else, he still can. That would be kind of my assumption of what happens with Chubba. I don't know how practical it is for him to leave this year. So that does help Nebraska out a little bit depth-wise in the room.
Absolutely.
So that will probably stop on transfer. I'm not just going to sit here and name transfer for 3 hours. Although I probably could. Just totally out on Tyler Van Dyke though. Don't bring him anywhere.
Yeah, no, right.
Like let's keep him somewhere else. We're good there. So there's your little update. We will talk to Mike Schaefer about the transfer portal quarterback situation. Who he thinks is practical, who he's heard Nebraska's talk to outside of the guys that we mentioned, Will Howard, Sam Levitt, and Blake Shapen, and which of those guys kind of get Schaefer's dander up a little bit and see who he thinks would help, because I think there's a very wide spectrum of guys that would be beneficial for Nebraska. You've got everything from the just like don't blow it guys, like the like just keep it on the road. Is like drive in the middle lanes here, and then you've got the like high upside guys. This guy could actually like DJU would strike me as a high upside guy.
Absolutely,
like that's a guy that or Will Howard.
Yeah, those are guys that are going to win games not by not turning the ball over, but by actually making plays.
Yeah, by like actually winning games. It's the don't lose games guys versus the win games guys.
Yeah,
right. Blake Shapen is more of a don't lose games guy, which is fine because Nebraska would be better with a don't lose games guy. That's hard to say. Don't lose games guy. But I'd be a little bit more excited if we got one of the win games guy.
100%.
But at this point, I will take just about anybody that's better than what we have. And again, no offense to those guys, but also, a little offense. It was pretty bad.
A little bit.
Like I was offended by the quarterback play this year.
Yeah.
They should also be offended by their own quarterback play. Right?
I'm sure they're great guys, but
this is not a personal attack.
Yeah.
It is just a statement of fact.
Yeah.
Like just look at the numbers, watch the games. It was freaking brutal. Coming up next, we're going to get to know Connor a little bit here because as I mentioned, this is, I believe, the third time we've met. So we're going to get to know you on Connor as we continue on in the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Good morning. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, and ESPN Tri-Cities in central Nebraska. I'm Ravi Lulla. Connor Kavulak is here with me this morning from the No Block, No Rock podcast. And we've been chatting about transfer portal quarterbacks. Lots of stuff going on in the YouTube stream where you can find us. Also on Twitter, seems to be a wide variety of opinions on the different quarterbacks we're talking about here on Twitter. Somebody asked me, and I think it's a fair question. They say, so you're out on Logan says you're out on Van Dyke, but you're in on DJU. I don't get it. One guy was a 5-star and didn't perform that well and had consistency and stars all around him. The other guy went through 3 OCs and some talent around him and was a 3-star coming out. I don't understand. Well, fair points. I will say part of it for me is the 3-star coming out versus the 5-star coming out. I like that. I think DJU is more talented overall, so that is part of it. The other thing for me is if you look at their career progression, Tyler Van Dyke started off as a redshirt freshman or COVID freshman. I don't know technically which one it was, but 2021 after he played in 2 games in 2020, In 2021, he had 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, over 60% completion, and his highest passing yards of his career, as well as his highest yards per attempt of his career. The next 2 years, he regressed. Whereas DJU, I feel like, had the opposite. He started off struggling a little bit with completion percentage, had a 9 touchdown to 10 interception ratio in 2021. He flipped that the next 2 years. Over 60% in 2022, 22 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Just under 60% in 2023, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And maybe more importantly, his yards per attempt increased every year from 6.0 to 6.8 to 8.4. I think DJ's getting better. I think Van Dyke has been getting worse. That's, to me, the big difference between the two guys.
I 100% agree. That 19 to 12 touchdown interception ratio for Tyler Van Dyke worries me a whole lot. I've seen enough of quarterbacks that were already concerned about throwing picks. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to move away from that.
Yeah.
And again, nothing against Tyler Van Dyke. Like, he's going to be a great quarterback wherever he ends up. I just don't want him in Nebraska.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of the directions for these guys in their careers.
Yeah.
That's the big one for me. Speaking of directions in careers, Connor, what is your day job? What do you do?
I actually help run Nebraska Brewing Company right up the road.
Terrific.
Yeah. I do social media management,
okay.
Manage the tap room area.
So you're not a brewer?
No, I am not.
Okay.
I got to clean kegs for them a few years ago.
Yeah. How was that?
Oh, it's a lovely time. You should come up sometime and I'll let you do it.
I'm probably not going to do that. I
No.
barely clean at my house, much to my wife's chagrin. So I'm probably not going other places to clean. But okay, so you do social media, you run the tap room for Nebraska Brewing Company. That's your full-time day job?
Yes.
Okay. How did you get into the NBNR podcast sports talk world?
That's actually a really funny story. So years ago, Mike Delaware and Jared Hall, amongst others, formed No Block, No Rock. And for a long time, Mike Delaware would bother me about, will you sponsor the podcast, whatever. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, he wore me down. And, as the brewery, we said, yes, we'll sponsor No Block, No Rock. About 6 months into that, they had a co-host that was sick or couldn't make it, whatever it was. And I filled in for 1 week. And then it was 2 weeks and 3 weeks. And now it's 3 years and they can't get rid of me. So that's kind of how that all formed. It was just pure chance, honestly.
Yeah.
It was the right place, right time. And we've had fun doing it ever since.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a fun podcast. If you guys haven't listened to it, you should check it out. I've been on there a couple times, only once with Connor. Apparently he ditched the second time, wasn't interested.
Yeah, I was avoiding you.
Wasn't interested in hanging out with me, but here we are. Now you're stuck with me for 3 hours. Okay, next question for Connor. And you don't have to answer it, but you probably should. How old are you?
I'm 28.
28.
Yeah,
okay.
I have a feeling I know what you're going to say next.
I mean, you're much younger than me. It's fine. It's fine. What did you think I was going to say?
I always get, like, if I get rid of the mustache, I look like I'm 16.
Oh,
which is 100% accurate.
No, my next question is regarding the mustache, but not about how old it makes you look. No, I would have guessed you like 30-ish.
Okay.
What's like 28, 30? What's
it's right. It's right in there.
Are you from here?
I am. Yeah. Well, I always say I'm from Omaha.
Yeah.
But I was raised in Louisville, Nebraska, which is like 25 minutes away. So not super far.
Is Louisville the correct pronunciation?
Yes, we pronounce our S.
Okay. You're not Kentucky, you're not Louisville.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Fair.
I anytime I tell people I'm from Louisville, I immediately get, "Countcky." It's like, no. They don't pronounce it. We do.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So just outside of Omaha.
Yeah. Pretty close.
Okay, fair enough. So the question about the mustache.
Yeah.
Did you have it before or after Top Gun Maverick came out?
October 3rd, 2019 is its birthday.
Okay.
A lot of people tell me I'm weird for knowing that.
Little.
Yeah, no, entirely.
Yeah,
they're correct.
It's a little strange.
I'm but yes, the short answer is yes.
So pre Top Gun Maverick.
Yes, 100%.
Because a lot of guys with your build went mustache pretty soon. They're like, I could be Miles Teller. It's like,
no,
not really.
Miles Teller is a very handsome man. I'm not trying to clone that.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Did I miss anything important about your general essence?
I don't know. That's a really tough question for me to ask myself. You've got me reflecting internally this morning, Ravi.
It's like one of those corporate jobs where you have to self-evaluate here.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's one. What is your favorite Nebraska football memory? You're 28, so you're not getting back to the good stuff.
No, this is tough because I've got a couple.
Okay.
I think the easy one was, I don't even remember what year it was. I was really, really young, but it was my first Husker game I ever got to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents took me to Nebraska, Missouri, and I was in a box. And while still being very, very young.
You were in a box?
Yeah. My dad was an important person in his past life.
Oh.
Now he runs a brewery.
Okay.
Okay. But
I'm sorry. I was
Were you thinking
no, not
literally
like a cardboard box. No.
I thought like they drove you to the game and like instead of a car seat,
like a beer box or something?
In like a
Yeah, they put a
you were
FedEx
like
stamp on
you
my
were in
forehead.
like a diaper box.
No.
Well, you hear the stories of like, oh, my parents couldn't afford a crib, so they just like I slept in a drawer in their dresser when I thought they literally were.
They put me in a Runza wrapper and snuck me in their jacket.
There's like a shooter in there.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you talking about?
No,
you were in like a luxury box.
Yes, exactly.
At the stadium.
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry, continue. I was very confused.
Yeah. So that being my first Husker game always has like a very special place for me.
Sure.
And then my freshman year at the University of Nebraska was the Northwestern Hail Mary.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that was an incredible memory. And I think that
you're a big Ron Kellogg guy.
Huge.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. I think everybody enjoys some Ron Kellogg in their life.
Yeah. I wonder what Ron Kellogg's up to.
I don't know. We should find that out.
Yeah.
Shane, we should get Ron Kellogg.
Well, that'd be cool.
Let's just see what he's up to.
Just call him on whim.
Just see what he's doing.
Yeah. Somebody got a cell phone number?
Yeah, I'm sure somebody does. If anybody knows where Ron Kellogg is, let us know.
Yeah.
You can call us on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline, 888-638-4876. Do we have a caller, Shane?
No,
that's from yesterday? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right. I was just very confused. I was like, I don't think I heard Shane pick up the phone. Okay, so you went to Nebraska.
Yes.
What did you study?
I spent too much time at the University of Nebraska.
Fair.
So I
studied a lot of things?
I did. So I did microbiology, advertising, and public relations.
Those are very different.
Yeah, very.
Okay.
History, Spanish, political science, and criminal justice.
Okay.
So kind of rounded out the board, left everything
Did you
wide
just
open.
graduate like last year? Because that's like 14 years worth of stuff there.
I graduated in 2019, so I did spend 5.5-ish years at the University
That's
of Nebraska.
Okay. I mean, 5.5 is okay. I think. Yeah. I mean, you probably should end up with a master's, but that's all right. Like,
yeah, a lot of people go to college for 7 years.
Yeah, they're called doctors. No, that's good. I did 5.5 in college too, and I studied much less useful things. Well, I don't know about less useful considering you work at a brewery now, but I mean,
yeah,
I studied theology and history, and now I'm a sports talk radio host. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I guess Nebraska football is the religion around here. So what,
it checks.
It
checks.
It is what it is. All right. Coming up next, Deion Sanders being crappy again.
Oh yeah.
We're going to talk about it because mostly I just want to tell people how right I was, because that's the joy of having your own radio show, is you can tell people, hey, I told you Deion sucked. Here we are. Coming up next, we will talk about Caden Robertson dropping some truth bombs about Deion Sanders here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Connor Kavulak is here with me. I want to go soft A on that last one so badly.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. You're doing it perfect.
Kavulak.
Yeah, you're doing it perfect.
So TK, one of our loyal YouTube listeners here, has a very important question for you.
Okay.
Perhaps the most important question you'll be asked, certainly on this show, but maybe in your life.
Oh, no.
How do you feel about the band Creed?
Oh, I actually love Creed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually love Creed.
We have another Creed junkie here. Terrific. That's the best answer. I might have made you leave if you answered that incorrectly.
Just take the headset off, walk out.
Travis was
with arms wide open.
With arms wide open. Love it. Was commenting that he was picturing you in a shoebox, or maybe I was picturing you in a shoebox.
So you guys both love Creed.
Oh yeah, Creed's the best.
Thank you, dear baby Jesus.
Ron Kellogg III is apparently a community builder for, I think, Lincoln Public Schools. I assume that's what LPS means.
I would think so.
TK goes, one of us. So terrific news on the Creed stuff there. We're about to get into Deion Sanders here. And Dion on the YouTube channel, different Dion, not Sanders,
Sure.
spelled differently, says I was one of the few that called it on Sanders when he was cool. And I don't just say that because he's saying I'm right, although that doesn't hurt. But also because the shine off of Deion Sanders has worn pretty dramatically pretty quickly. And the reason I bring this up now is because the thing that we heard last night from Caden Robertson, who was a linebacker there, I think he was only there for a semester under Deion. I think he might have left after spring ball, if I am lining things up correctly from what he was talking about with Jason Whitlock yesterday, was the thing that Caden was talking about was the same thing that bothered me in the moment, because my biggest issue was the way he was handling players' lives, right? And that went back to when he goes in and he's basically like having these really personal conversations about cutting guys and making guys move on and stuff on camera. And like, this is these guys' lives, right? Like he says he's all about the kids, and he says he's all about like doing what's right for these guys and stuff like that. And maybe he is for some of them, but you've seen it on like Hard Knocks and stuff before, where they try and handle that situation. And maybe it is just for the camera, right?
Yeah.
But they try and handle that situation with as much like care and delicacy as they possibly can. Because this, whether it's Hard Knocks, whether it's college football at Colorado, whatever it is, this is these guys' lifelong dreams. They have been working for this their entire life. And to just go in there so cavalierly and say, hey, you're not good enough for me, get out. That just hit me the wrong way, and it always will. And the part of the reason that it bothered me so much, and we got a little bit of a peek behind the curtain with Caden Robertson, part of the reason it bothered me so much is, have you ever been like out with like a friend and his girlfriend or something, or a friend and his wife or whoever, and they kind of like start bickering a little bit in public, and you're like, this is super uncomfortable. And part of the reason it's uncomfortable for me, other than like I don't like watching people like argue and fight in front of me, is, especially like a couple, is if that's what they're like in front of people, what is it like when no one's around?
Yeah.
Because if it's bad enough to make me uncomfortable and you're comfortable doing that in front of me, what does it look like when there's no one there? And that was the same thought process I had with Deion. I was like, if this is how he is, if he's this okay with players being disposable to him on camera, publicly, what is it like when no one's watching? And we heard a little bit from Caden Robertson what it was like, how he made himself super unapproachable, that he never had a conversation with Deion, ever. How Deion either has a floor mat or a sign or whatever that says, did I ask you to come in? Or basically, don't come in unless asked. Like some of these things start lining up with the way I felt about Deion before. Now, and this is where I'll ask you to check me if I'm wrong here. Is that a big deal? Is it confirmation bias for me? Like, how did you process that?
So I will tell you right now, I have unashamedly been a hater.
Okay, fair.
Since day one, I just had this belief that we actually talked about this last time on the podcast, having a mindset over money approach. And I think with Deion, what you see is this money mindset approach, where it is about how are we going to rake in enough? You're going to get that attention. And then, when you make that money and that attention your main focus, you do start to separate yourself from your players. You're going to see less people coming back. You're going to see massive decommits in the 24 and 25 classes.
Yeah, I mean, you already are. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So to me, if I'm a part of that program, it's a massive deal. Mm-hmm. As a Nebraska fan, it's simply entertaining.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, that's what. But yes, I do think it's a big deal that Deion is at least allegedly acting like that to his team and potentially staff.
Well, and it bothers me because, and maybe it's because I used to coach in college a little bit or whatever, obviously at a much lower level, but like, I know how much it means to those guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And the fact that he, again, treats them as disposable is how I felt when I saw those first videos of like, hey, like, I'm bringing Louis, so I don't need you. Like,
Exactly.
whatever. Like, I'm bringing my own luggage. So, like, you can go. If you're not about this, then get out of here. And, like, all of those conversations that he had on camera publicly. And there was a part of me that was like, okay, maybe he's only saying that because he's on camera. Like, maybe in private moments, he's much more, like, delicate about how he handles things and much more caring. And that's what I hoped it was. But again, I go back to my analogy of like when you're out to dinner with another couple, usually they're not putting on a show for you, right?
Yeah.
This is a microcosm of the real thing that's happening behind closed doors. And that's what it felt like with Deion to me. And that seems to be, and again, in a vacuum, those things, maybe not the biggest deal in the world.
Sure.
Like, you could talk me into, hey, like, Deion has open office hours during these times. When it's outside of those times, he's got these other commitments. He really has to focus and buckle down. And he, maybe he's got a little ADHD, gets distracted real easily with people walking by. Like, you could make that argument if this is the only thing.
Yeah.
Right? If this is the only thing. But in the context of everything we've seen about Deion, it is a real hard sell that this is not another symptom of the Deion problem.
Yeah. It's just a cultural issue.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And it ultimately stems from Deion.
It is. And I know people at the beginning of the year were super frustrated about first Colorado beating Nebraska, but also about them starting 3-0 and them getting the national headlines and all this. But that was fool's gold. I mean, we talked about it last week. Colorado didn't beat a team with a winning record.
No.
Not one. They only won 4 games, which, by the way, fewer than Nebraska. If you want to check out, like, fewer than Nebraska, and they're in, I think, dramatically worse shape moving forward.
Oh, 100%
than Nebraska.
Yeah,
is. Like, they might be worse next year because I think you're going to have a hard time getting that same number and level of transfers to come into Colorado
after what they just saw.
Yeah, after everything that's happened. So I know some people are like, oh, man, we should have hired Deion. God, no. Like, you might not be a Matt Rule guy, and that's fine. If you want to have a conversation about, like, Luke Fickell versus Matt Rule or whoever else, sure. But don't bring Deion into this conversation because culturally, that is not what Nebraska's about. And this is, listen,
my man.
I'm glad that he got a shot because I genuinely didn't know if he was a good football coach at Jackson State.
How could you?
Like, I knew he got better players than everybody else, which was impressive.
Yeah.
To get the level players he got at Jackson State was incredibly impressive, right?
Very.
And so I was like, okay, like, yeah, he deserves a shot. He's done really well there. But I feel like we found out that the Deion from his playing days, the Deion from TV and all that kind of stuff is kind of still the same guy we're getting now.
Yeah,
and
it wasn't an act.
That's a problem. And maybe it is an act, but it's become so much part of who he is that I'm not sure he could drop it if he wanted to.
Yeah. What's insane to me, and football unrelated, but talking about the character of Deion throughout the season, ranking his kids publicly.
Yeah.
That is an insane move, right?
No, it's totally nuts. And I think people thought it was a bit, and I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. Because he kept updating them.
Yes.
And there was some movement near the end of the season there. I had my MVP odds in, and my Lord, was I wrong.
Did you put a little prop bet in on Deion's kids?
I had Shador plus 200, and he drops down to number 2.
Was it the social media kid that he had? Did
Yeah.
he end up number 1? We all know Shiloh wasn't going to get it.
No.
Yeah, that's a wild move. If you're just openly ranking your children, tough.
Yeah, tough.
That's all I've got on Deion. I don't want to talk about Deion anymore, but I felt it needed to be brought up. Coming up next, we're going to talk to our friend Michael Severe. He is the director of the Jet Foundation. We will talk to him about the Jet Award. The semifinalists came out, and we will get to that on Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Coming down to Branch, catches at the 25, finds a seam at the 35, to the 45, up the middle to the 40. He won't be touched. Zachariah Branch, touchdown USC. Wow.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Connor Kavulak here with me as well. We are brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. You can do it in Lincoln or in Omaha at Horseman's Park. It is a place where you can do straight bets, props, parlays, live in-game betting. You can also bet on nearly every major sporting event. Make sure you check out the Warhorse Casino app for a full list of house rules and all the details there. That's Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Joining us now on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is our guy, Michael Severe, the executive director of the Jet Award Foundation. Michael, how are you this morning?
I am good. Look at you hanging with my buddy CK. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Way to go.
How do you guys know each other?
So I've done Connor's podcast, and his mom owns Nebraska Brewing Company, where that's our landing spot on the 50-mile march. And so I've known his mom for a few years, and I've known Connor for about a year or so.
Perfect. Well, I told Connor after I did the podcast, I got a Facebook friend request from Kim Kavulak, and I go, hey, who is that? And he goes, oh, it's my mom. I was like, that makes sense. That's a mom move.
Yeah.
But that's all right there. Michael, I know how long have you been with the Jet Foundation now? A little over a year?
Oh, no, as the executive director since July, I volunteered with them since the beginning, since they first got started in 2011. They needed somebody to kind of be the media coordinator and put together the voting process. And so I've been along for the ride, but just since July as executive director.
So as your role as executive director, like what does that look like? What is your day-to-day in terms of how you operate this foundation?
Well, there's a lot of meetings. I go on a lot of meetings. Here's a great example. Yesterday I was over at Iowa Western because currently we raise money for the Johnny Rogers Career and Technical Scholarship, which goes to kids who want to go into the trades at Metro. But there's a number of students over in Council Bluffs and Potawatomi County, and they don't have the same kind of scholarships over there like we can offer. So I'm talking with Iowa Western about expanding our scholarship program over there to their college, so those kids in Potawatomi County can go to school for free if they major in the trade. So it's stuff like that. I'm trying to raise money. Obviously, you meet with people, make sure that they understand what you're doing in terms of the scholarship and the award. It's a lot of meetings. Currently, I'm driving to Lincoln to record Big Red Wrap-Up, but in general, it's usually meeting with somebody about the foundation or about the scholarship, just trying to expand it,
Michael, speaking of the actual award, the semifinalists came out. Zachariah Branch from USC, Jacob DeJesus from UNLV, and Jaden Harrison from Marshall. I know that there's a kind of a panel. How do those semifinalists get chosen, and how will the ultimate winner be chosen?
So it's really a different award than almost any other award out there because of the fact that many times your best returners will be first-year players because that's who's back there a lot of times on kickoff and punt return. So, like, for example, Zachariah Branch, this guy's a true freshman, and then other guys will pop off. Maybe they don't return at all their freshman and sophomore year. There's an injury, and all of a sudden they're now a junior, but they're doing the return. So it's a really different award, and every week it really is a change. If you have a great offensive lineman, whether it be the Outland or for the Remington for the center award, you know that guy coming in, all season long. Well, you can have a weekend where a guy gets 2 kickoff returns in a week, and all of a sudden it becomes a favorite for the award. So it's a little bit different. I have a panel of 13 guys. This is the 13th year. Guys like Dennis Dodd and Phil Steele. Some local guys like Sam McEwen are on there too. So I try to make sure that we had a good mixture from around the country. And then as the season goes along, I send them notes. I'm like, here are the guys who are the hot candidates right now. Kind of a mid-season award. Then I sent them a list of 15 guys that were best in combined returns, kickoff and punt. The guy who led the punt return in terms of average, guys who have touchdowns. And so I send that to them constantly so they can keep up. And then I sent them a list just a couple of weeks ago of the top 10 guys, and I put all their stats, sent that to them, and I put a list together on one of the survey accounts, and I had them just rank them, 1 through actually 11. It was 11 guys. And they ranked them, and we took the top 3. And it's a good list. You got the guy who leads in kickoff return average, the guy who leads in punt return average, the guy who leads in combined returns, and one of the most exciting players in college football when you talk about DeJesus, who nobody really knows at UNLV, but if you ever watch them going through this amazing season, he constantly made plays out of the backfield as a wide receiver and as a returner. So it's a good list. It's just it's changed a lot. Kickoff and punt return try to devalue it a little bit. It's a little bit different. But still, this year we had more kickoff and punt return touchdowns than we had last year, and we're only one off how many we had 2 years ago and 10 more than 3 years ago. So it did pick up a little bit this year.
Michael, so you do have a hand in kind of putting the pool together, but then the football writers kind of choose which guys actually win. Is that right?
Yeah, we did because, like, for example, I would have loved for Cooper DeJean to be in that final 3 because of the proximity, because people know him. But, he missed the last 3 games of the season.
That's tough.
He really only had the 1 touchdown return. He had the 1 call back. So I would have loved to see him in the package, but that's not who they voted for. So I just go with those. And also Johnny Rogers gets a vote as well. And Coach Reed, William Reed, longtime football coach at Central, who helped start this award, those guys get a vote as well. So it's 15 total people voting for the semifinalists. And then all the former voters, all the former winners will also vote for the winner when we do that in about a month.
All right, Michael, let's change gears here a little bit now. That award will be given out April 4th at the Jet Award Gala. So keep an eye on the Jet Award social media accounts for more updates on that if you want to be a part of that. Let's talk a little bit about Nebraska, though. First of all, are any of these guys on the semifinal or any of the pool wanting to transfer to Nebraska? Anybody available?
I don't know about that. I tell you this, Ravi, I truly miss, and I know we turned everything to Nebraska, but I truly miss when, and over the years this happened, where a freshman popped up out of nowhere, whether it was a J.D. Spielman or Zamario Pilsonel, or go all the way back to a guy like, what's his name? Several guys that have popped up
like
over
DeJuan
the years.
Gross back in the day?
Ron Gross, exactly what I was thinking about. He's actually our Legacy Award winner this year.
Nice.
We're going to give him an award because, from 2000 to 2002, he was a dynamic guy. But I do miss the true freshman at Nebraska all of a sudden being this great return. I should have said Amir Abdullah, same thing, return against Fresno State. So I missed that, but no, there's no, I don't know if anybody's transferred to Nebraska.
Well, I mean, listen, maybe just feel it out a little bit. Yeah. Don't tamper it all, but maybe just feel it out a little bit for me.
You can tamper a little.
You're not on staff. You can say whatever you want, man. Mike, no, I will say there is something there's just a different feel about a big punt or kick return, right? Like it has such a different impact on the game than just a normal big play, and that's part of the reason. I mean, the founder and namesake of the award, Johnny Rodgers, has obviously one of the most famous punt returns of all time. So I love that you guys do this, that you honor these guys that a lot of times don't, have the other counting stats as either receivers or other positions. Sometimes they do. You mentioned a guy like Cooper DeJean, who obviously is an NFL caliber defensive back, but I do think it's really cool that you honor these guys that are, maybe have this very special skill set, and that's their biggest way that they contribute to the team. It's a pretty cool award.
That's why, Johnny created it. You go back to 2010 when ESPN came out with their all 100 year of college footballs, and it kind of went through all the best players at every position, and they didn't have anybody for return specialists, right? And they're like, wait, this is a mistake. So Dan Jenkins goes out and puts together a list of the top 3 all-time returners. Johnny was on there. Deion Sanders was on there. And so Johnny was like, you know what, we need to have an award for this. And so he came to us, and we helped him put it together. And out of all of the award shows, and I've been to a few of them, I've been to the Remington, I've been to the Outland, there's no one that has better package in terms of plays than ours, right? I mean, it's great to see an offensive line pull, or offensive line pull, or Blitnikoff's got some wide receivers that make big plays, but to have a guy return for 100 yards, or to have a guy bring back a punt by breaking 3 or 4 tackles, it's why Johnny calls him the baddest man on the planet, because I don't know if you've ever returned a punt before, but you're standing there with your head up in the air, you're looking.
No, it's horrifying. It's horrifying.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying. So for a kickoff return, even though you got more time, you're running into essentially 10 guys that are thinking, if I get a huge hit, that may help me end up playing on the regular down.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to kill you then. And so it's one of the hardest jobs in sports. Doesn't get as much recognition, but when it happens, when the touchdown happens, it is the most exciting play in sports, besides maybe the Hail Mary, which I personally have an affinity for. Other than that, it's the most exciting play in sports.
Michael, I have a request for you. Let me see if you can do this for me, all right? Okay. Since you are the executive director, how much input do you get in the Legacy Award winners?
A lot. So it's William Reed, who is our, like I said, co-founder of the award. He kind of has this formula he puts together, and he goes back year by year and finds who were the best 2 or 3 returners that year, and then puts them into a list. And then when we come to the point where we need another Legacy Award, he goes to that list, pulls somebody out, and that's basically it. But I have a little bit of I work with him when we're putting together the list. Okay, so I might need you to fudge the numbers on this because I don't know what his entire numbers are, but I need you to get Peter Warwick to Omaha for me so I can meet him. Now, Peter Warwick is someone that we have pursued in the past to do this. I know we have. I don't know what year it was, but I know he's on that list. Devin Hester's on the list. Peter Warwick's on the list. And the grand poobah on the list is Deion Sanders. I
Sure.
know those are three people that Coach Reed really wants to bring to town for the Legacy Award. But I will look into it. I know Peter, I'm pretty sure it's next year or it's 2025, whereas he has him listed, what Coach Reed does, as somebody he wants to get.
Okay. When that happens, let me know. I need to meet Peter Warwick. He's one of my all-time favorite college football players. So just see what you can do for me, Michael.
I will make sure that his name gets brought up, but I'm almost positive that Coach Reed has him on there. I believe he was, along with being a first-team All-American. Wasn't he also a first-team All-American returner?
I think he was. He was an incredible returner. I know later in his career he didn't do it as much, so I wasn't sure what the numbers were.
Yeah, in college, so obviously your freshman and sophomore year you do it the most, but that's something I certainly can work on getting that done. I certainly want to see guys like that back here because they're big draws for the Jet Award Gala. You bring a guy back like that or a guy like Devin Hester, you bring those guys back, people want to come see them.
Well, and he had, obviously not as famous as Johnny Rodgers, but he had the punt return for touchdown in the national championship game against Virginia Tech. Like, that's one of the bigger ones in history, too.
Yeah, that one, Desmond Howard's obviously, that ended up help winning getting to a national championship kind of game. But yeah, when you get a guy that makes a play like that, and by the way, Johnny had like 4 or 5 of them in 1 year, and they're all exciting. But obviously, the one that happens in the game of the century is the one that everybody remembers. But if you go back and you look, he had one against Alabama that was absolutely incredible. I think at one point he had one against Auburn during his career too. He made excitement happen on the field, and that's why we love this award. It's why we love putting these people together, getting here to come to Omaha. We love that Omaha is kind of we are the place for awards, right? Or Nebraska is. Remington, we got the Outland, and we have the Jet Award, which is pretty cool that 3 out of the top 20 awards are here in Nebraska.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking with Michael Severe, the executive director of the Jet Award Foundation. Michael, before I do want to ask you some current football questions, but before we get to that, just tell us a little bit about what the foundation does. I know that they obviously present the award, but there's like a nonprofit part of this as well, right?
Yeah, it's 2017. We got together and put together a 501c3, trying to figure out the best way to be able to use the money and the funds that we raised with the gala. And it was a great idea to look into the trades because obviously Johnny went to Tech High. For those who don't know, Tech High was the trade high school in Omaha for a long time. And so he was like, let's do something with the trades. We got together with Metro. And so every dollar we raise, Metro matches it per dollar. So it costs $10,000 for a student to get the associates at Metro over the course of 2 years. We raise $5,000. They match $5,000. That's a scholarship for a young person or someone who's going back to school. And so we've been doing that, raising that money now since 2018. We currently have 140 students on the Johnny Rodgers Career Technical Scholarship right now at Metro. We've had almost 100 graduate, and countless others have gone through and gotten certificates as well, whether it is a CDL or an IT or stuff like that. So we're constantly trying to just get people into the trades because it's a shortage. And we know that you can graduate with no debt, and all of a sudden you're in a job in 3 or 4 years where you're making $80,000, $100,000, and you have no college debt. So we want more and more young people and more people to go into the trades, and that's what we do as a foundation.
Yeah, and that's a terrific goal. As you said, it's a huge area of need and a huge opportunity for young people to kind of change their situations and improve their lives without having to take on a ton of college debt. So very cool stuff you're doing there. Michael, I know you're a huge quarterback nerd, so I'm gonna pick your brain on some of these transfer portal quarterbacks a little bit here. Have you seen any guys? I know we saw Sam Levitt a little bit because he was at Michigan State. Are there any of the guys that Nebraska's kind of been talking to, whether it's like a Blake Schaefer, a Sam Levitt? I know they talked to Will Howard. I don't know if that's a realistic option. I'm sure you've seen him. Are there any of the guys that you look at and say, hey, I actually think that guy could be really good at Nebraska?
Well, Schaefer intrigues me because he went to Evangel High School, which is outside of Shreveport. It's one of the best high schools in the state of Louisiana. It was created back when I first got out of high school, so I followed Evangel for years. John David Booty went to school there. Well, all the Booties went there. But a lot of great players that have come out of there, and they run a pro-style system at Evangel. Not a lot of us just run the quarterback, and so I knew that kid would be ready when he came out of high school, so I like him. Levitt's a great athlete. Honestly, Levitt's one of those guys where if he didn't play quarterback, I think he could play wide receiver. I honestly think he could with his speed. Will Howard would be amazing just because of the amount of reps he's taken, and you know he can come in here and run in the offense. My thing is a lot of times is I would almost rather look at, like, go to a place like Incarnate Word, right, which is an FCS school which runs a great offense that has already shown you they can produce quarterbacks that you can bring up, because it's happened already. Now, currently at Incarnate Word, the starter is going to be Richard Torres, so they're not bringing Richard Torres back. But those are the kind of places I would go. I would look FCS. I mean, when I went to Sam Houston State, which used to be an FCS school, there's a lot of great talent down there. And a lot of times those guys just either didn't have the grades ready or they didn't quite grow into their bodies yet. You find them after 2 years in FCS. That's now the new grooming place for quarterbacks, right? So I would look down there more than even so maybe at the FBS level, because I think convincing them to come to Nebraska where there is no tradition for quarterbacks going to the NFL, it'd be really difficult to make that even with the NIL money. So I almost think the better place would be to go down to FCS and find a player down there that fits you, what you want to do, and bring them up for maybe a little bit less money and maybe even more upside.
So you kind of lean toward the guys with production at lower levels versus the highly touted guys that haven't produced yet. Is that right?
I like both of those. I like the one where you can go get a guy who is just, obviously what's happening at Texas. The kid at Texas makes a lot of sense. He's had 3 or 4 starts. He's shown what he can do in a couple of games. That's optimal if you could do that. I'd rather that than a guy who's been starting 2 or 3 years at a school, but because he's graduated now and he's basically looking for the money. That's what he's going for. All those guys who put themselves in the portal the last couple of days, they're looking for the money. That's because there's no reason to leave some of those schools. They're the starter. So I don't know if I want that guy as much as I want the guy who is still fighting to be a starter, but realizes there's somebody in front of him, maybe more highly rated, and he can't get that gig. So him, or going down to the level of a guy who's proven it at FCS, or even some guys not Power 5 as well as possible. You could do that. But I've seen guys in FCS. I watch enough FCS, as being a SAM graduate, that I know there are guys down there that can come up and play. I know Samori Toure came up from Montana, and there was no transition whatsoever at wide receiver. I think there's guys at quarterback like that as well.
So you talk about, there's guys in that FCS level that can play up in Nebraska. Is there any name that comes to your mind? Is there anyone that sticks out as a real candidate?
I've seen a list of some guys. There's a great list on The Athletic right now that Bruce Feldman did. It was kind of a amalgamation of all their guys getting together and putting together. And there were a couple of FCS guys down there that they mentioned. I don't remember their names currently, but they were kind of overshadowed by all of the big name guys who are already going into portal. That's not my job. They have a guy. They have guys on staff that all they do is crunch tape.
Yeah.
And all you got to do is you crunch tape. There's a lot of tape out there now for FCS. It's not hard like it used to be. You go down there. There are a couple of guys at some of the historically black colleges that are some really good quarterbacks. Now, we talk about Shadir Sanders at Jackson State, and he was unique. But there have been guys that have come through there that I think that's an untapped market. Look down there. You're looking for an athletic quarterback who can both run and throw. They've got some guys down there at that level. Maybe you look down there, too, and see if there's somebody who's willing to come up here to Nebraska and help you win. I don't have the names, but I know that level, and I know that there are guys down there.
Michael, how do you feel about a guy like Kyle McCord, who was the starter, maybe wouldn't be the starter next year, but was very productive this year, has the talent pedigree? I mean, I assume he's going to be a hot commodity, but in terms of guys like that where, maybe it's not a money grab, maybe they're just going to get overtaken by some freshmen that they like more. Like, how do you feel about those types of guys?
He's really interesting because I think, so that Michigan game, I know he has the 2 picks, but he showed me more in that game than he showed me an entire season for Ohio State. He made some throws. He moved in the pocket better. Once he got the jitters out early from the first interception, I thought he looked pretty good. At the same time, you just started for Ohio State for 12, if you stayed for a bowl game, 13 games. I would say to myself, I don't care who they have. I'm beating them out for this job. And I stayed through the spring at least, right? Because I think I don't have to go to the spring, and I don't have to go to another school in the spring and prove myself. I proved myself. I stayed through the spring and see if I can win that job and stay at Ohio State. That's what I do if I'm Kyle McCord. But if that's not what he's choosing to do, I certainly like him. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback, but I do believe he is a good enough college quarterback to win you a bunch of games. You have talent around him. In that Michigan game, go back and look. He made 4 or 5 throws in there. I don't think he made the entire season. So it's obvious that he can take it to the next level. I would say, what are you doing? Stay at Ohio State. Try to win that gig. It's Ohio State. You win a national championship next year, right?
Yeah. Michael, switching to guys that are leaving college to go to the NFL rather than in the transfer portal, I know that you have some very specific things that you look for when you're evaluating quarterbacks. Out of the top guys, so like your Drake Mays, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, is there one of those guys that you see some serious red flags on that you're concerned about?
Oh, the red flags. Let me first say real quick about Caleb Williams. I am so tired of the Caleb Williams slander. This is a guy who had zero defense and knew every time he touched the ball, he needed to try to score. Mm-hmm. That is an immeasurable pressure to put on a quarterback. And it reminds me so much of Mahomes when he came out, because Mahomes' defense was worse than what they had at USC. And he knew every time he had to score. So people then broke down the tape and go, well, look, he's trying to make this play when it's not there. Well, yeah, his team was giving up 46 points a game. He had to. Caleb Williams knew he had to do. That kid is going to be great. I love Caleb Williams. I don't care about the fact that he cried with his mom or that he is an intellectual. He is going to be great. Now, so red flags. I worry about the fact that I don't know if Drake May's ever really been in a really big game. Like, what is the biggest game that he was in and had to win? I guess you could talk about rivalry games against NC State or when you play a game against a Clemson, but has he been in a game where you can point to and go, I know that guy, when it comes to it, can raise his level to be a great NFL quarterback. I don't know that about him. The red flag on Penix, and I like him a lot, is simply injuries.
Yeah.
You look at the amount of injuries he had in college, and I believe he also was hurt even in high school. That seems to always follow you in the NFL, and the next thing you know, that guy's hurt. But in terms of being a precise passer, Penix makes throws at times from both different levels and different paces that I go, wow, I can't believe he made that throw. So he's got all the ability, but the red flag is injuries. It's hard to say I'm going to take a guy that high knowing that he's had those problems. And then Bo Nix is, part of it's his size. Part of it is that he's kind of a wild man at times in the things he does. But Bo Nix reminds me a lot of a guy who is going to be a backup in the NFL for 10 years, going to get a couple chances to start, but I don't think he's ever been a starter in the league.
That's Michael Severe, the Executive Director of the Jet Award Foundation. Michael, thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure we'll catch up with you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ravi. See you guys. Bye, Connor.
See you later, Michael.
That's Michael Severe, the Executive Director of the Jet Award Foundation. We are over time here, so we got to go. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the H&H Chevrolet stage. I'm Ravi Lulla. Connor Kavulak here with me as well. A reminder, using your seatbelt saves lives and prevents injuries, but only if it is worn properly. Make it click. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Something that we've been trying to make click in our brains and haven't really been able to figure out how to do is that college football playoff. I know I talked about this some yesterday. It's been, I don't know, almost 48 hours since the announcement came out.
You went like an hour and a half yesterday.
Well,
it was a good hour and a half, though. I liked it.
It's been almost 48 hours, and I still haven't heard a reason that I think is good enough for leaving Florida State out of the college football playoff. I saw a bunch of different takes yesterday, and it seems like most people are on the page that Florida State should have been in, because at some point the wins and losses have to matter. They just have to. And instead of going by the results, which are right there in front of your face, we tried to turn this into, a boxing match where you're trying to judge what happens rather than, a team sport where you can actually keep score. And let's be honest, I love boxing. the judging is the thing that everyone hates the most about boxing. It
100%.
is the most flawed portion of the process. And that's what we've chosen to do to college football, rather than look at the results and say, hey, Florida State, Power 5 team, went undefeated, won their conference champion, you're in, right? Instead, we're like, no, let's make this more complicated. Let's add in some judgment and whatever and nonsense. And so we're sitting here the same way we feel after a title fight that was judged in a way that we don't understand and doesn't make any sense. I know we don't get that a ton around here because Bud Crawford just knocks everybody out.
Yeah.
But for other people, for less fortunate boxing fans, you sit in this place and you're like, hey, how did that decision go against my guy? And it's like, well, you know, the fight was in this guy's home country and he knew he was going to have to knock him out. The fact that that's even a thing in boxing is the dumbest thing in the world. That's like, well, yeah, you're fighting in this guy's home country. You're going to have to knock him out because you're never going to get a decision. It's like, okay, well, that's idiotic, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing we've brought to college football. And I don't understand it.
I think the biggest thing is if they were at least forthcoming about how they made the decision. I know they've, released these seemingly almost AI generated responses to this controversy, but if they just came out and said, this is exactly what went into it, this is, the rubric for how you get there, it would make a little bit more sense. I'm not saying it would make total sense, but it would make a little bit more. But I mean, with Florida State, people keep talking about, the most deserving versus best team getting in. Pointing to TCU last year getting blown out by Georgia. Awful game.
Yeah.
And does Florida State get smacked first round if they get in? Potentially. There's a decent likelihood that happens. But again, you talk about they go undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
They win the ACC with a third string quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't know how you prevent those guys. What more could they have done to get into those playoffs?
I mean, they could have lied about Jordan Travis's injury and said maybe he comes back.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that was brought up yesterday, and I laughed at it a little bit because it's like, well, his foot was pointing the wrong direction, so that's hard to lie about. But I mean, that's the only thing they could have done is just be like, oh no, we think he could come back.
Yeah,
and I'll be honest, Creighton did this a few years ago. It didn't end up mattering because the NCAA tournament got canceled because of COVID. But Marcus Zagorowski tore his meniscus at the very end of the last regular season game against Seton Hall, where they won the Big East regular season title. Marcus Zagorowski tore his meniscus in that game. He was not going to be available for the NCAA tournament. It came out later. But Creighton was like, hey, with this might be, if they get to the Sweet 16, he might be available. And
yeah, so just lie.
Yeah, but so like that's the only thing they could have done different is just lie about it.
Well, and I really disliked again, part of their explanation being that, without Travis Hunter, this is a different team. We have to evaluate this team as it is now.
Jordan Travis.
I'm sorry, not Travis Hunter. But you look at this Alabama team that was missing nobody, but last week beats Auburn by 6.
On a miracle.
Yeah, on a miracle play. Yeah. Was it a 31-yarder? 31-yard bomb?
4th and 31, yeah. And it was – and the reason they can't give you the transparency you're asking for is because their process is illogical.
Yeah, it's flawed.
And so if you have a stupid process, you can't be transparent about it because then people would know how stupid the process is.
Exactly.
Because, and I talked about this yesterday a little bit, if the process made sense, Florida State would have dropped last week after Travis got injured, after they already knew, like, hey, this isn't the same team without Jordan Travis. We don't view them the same way without Jordan Travis. They have to prove to us that they're worthy without Jordan Travis.
Yeah.
Then they would have dropped them prior to the ACC championship game and championship week. They wouldn't have been ahead of Alabama and Texas still. That's why they can't give you a transparent reason, because they did it in the stupidest way possible.
Agreed. There were several points where they could have pulled Florida State out of that spot.
Yes.
And they just either refused to or still believed, at least up until that moment, that they deserved it.
To be fair, they did 1 week. They dropped them to 5 1 week, the week after the injury.
Sure.
But then Ohio State and Michigan played. So Ohio State fell out. Florida State moved back up. That would have been the perfect opportunity to leave Florida State out, move Texas and Alabama back up. But you've got these super old dudes in a room that apparently can't think 2 weeks ahead of time to be like, hey, what are some possible consequences to these actions?
Yeah. I love that you say super old dudes because I saw the picture of the
Oh my God. I
playoff
looked it
selection.
up yesterday because I just assumed it was a bunch of super old dudes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I should check to make sure. So live on the air yesterday, I just type in college football playoff committee, and it shows up these pictures of about 80 old dudes.
In their 80s.
Yeah, like 80.
Yeah.
They're 80 for 80 over here. And I'm looking at this, and I go, do you really not, have we lost the cognitive ability to think 2 weeks ahead? Because that's all you would have had to do is think 2 weeks ahead. Because we were all doing that. We're like, hey, this playoff committee could be in a weird spot if X, Y, and Z happens. And guess what? X, Y, and Z happened.
Yeah.
The exact way that we talked about. If every guy that does a sports talk radio show in the country was having this conversation, how was the playoff committee not having this conversation?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, it was not a niche conversation that was going on. Everyone is wondering.
The storyline in college football, and you guys literally have one job.
Yeah, that's it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. The rest of the rankings don't really bother me.
No, it's fine.
It's fine. But that number 4 spot really does.
Listen, what I genuinely think happened was I think they thought Alabama was better than Texas. Like, I think they believed Alabama was better than Texas. I think they were too scared to put Alabama over Texas because of the head-to-head game, which it would have been really easy to explain. Be like, hey, that was like week 2. It was a super long time ago.
Sure.
We think these teams have changed a lot since then. Obviously, Jalen Milroe's gotten a lot better. We think Alabama's better now. We think they have a better resume, which they do, by the way.
I would say so.
It's like we get the head-to-head matters, and we did factor that in, but the overall resume for Alabama was better. How hard was that for me to explain?
It took you like 45 seconds, and it made a whole lot of sense.
Did it make sense to you?
Yeah.
That's all they had to do.
And on the back end of that, I mean, because it could be explained to where Georgia was number 1 for how many weeks in a row, then all of a sudden, boom, I mean, it's on the back end now. Now they're all of a sudden out of the top 4. So it's the same type of thing, just the opposite way of looking at it right there. I mean, it was right there for them to easily explain why they didn't have Florida State there.
I don't think they had the cojones to put in Alabama without Texas because I think they were afraid of the Texas backlash.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're like, well, instead, we will just host Florida State. We'll put them both in because that was the easy way out of that situation. And instead, they're just like, sorry, Florida State, your quarterback got hurt. Your team doesn't matter anymore. Like,
see ya.
None of it made sense. That's the part that makes me the most angry is none of it made sense.
Yeah.
If you put Florida State at 5 or 6 and it all makes sense, fine. I get that.
Sure.
I disagree, but I get it.
But you got to at least provide a reason.
You've got to at least make it make a little bit of sense. Yeah. Coming up, we've got Kerry Miller from Bleacher Report going to talk a little college basketball here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
12:20 to play. Lance Jones breaks the full court pressure on the dribble. Lobs for Edey. He catches and dunks. Zach Edey, 25 points. Caleb averages 4 rebounds a game. Lance Jones, 3 more for the left wing.
He has been dynamite this second half.
17 points for Lance.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha. And ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi Lulla. Connor Kavulak here with me this morning. And we are brought to you by Pratt Dental. Pratt Dental in North Platte, Nebraska offers the BioClear method and modern smile design, which can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments such as crowns. They were the first certified dentist in Nebraska in this method, and it can create a alternative to crowns. Multiple restorations in a day can be done less time, less invasive, less waiting, and fewer appointments. You can go check out some more information on the BioClear method at prattdental.com/BioClear-dental-treatment. Or if you just want to go to prattdental.com, under the services tab, you can click on BioClear Dental Treatment. We are joined now by Kerry Miller. He is a sports writer and covers college basketball for Bleacher Report. Kerry, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We are doing well also. Wanted to get you on here because the net rankings came out. The first net rankings came out for college basketball, and there was a hometown team very high in those rankings in Creighton. Out of some of those teams, Creighton was up there started at 4, dropped to 5 yesterday. Colorado State's at 7, BYU's at 2. Any of those teams in that top 10 to 15 that kind of surprised you by how high they were?
Surprise? No, because at this point, I think we realized that the early season net rankings is just kind of a barometer of who's beating the crap out of bad teams. Not.
Fair.
So
fair.
We knew BYU was going to be way up there, and I'm not trying to slight any of the teams at the top. Like Creighton is a deservedly top 10 team. I think they certainly proved that in destroying Nebraska. I'm not trying to say Nebraska is a bad team, but I don't think, Princeton was top 10. I don't think Princeton's going to be top 10 in the net at the end of the season.
Sure.
I don't know if Colorado State has the staying power of the top 10 team, even though they've been, really solid out of the gate. But certainly BYU at 2 is kind of the oddball of all of them, because I think it was Houston, Arizona, and Purdue, and then BYU, which Houston, Arizona, and Purdue, I have them as projected 1 seeds right now, along with Kansas, who's down to like 15 or 16. But, for BYU to be at 2, that's basically saying they should be a 1 seed right now, which, I mean, they're good, but I don't know if I'm ready to go there yet.
So you don't think BYU's a 1 seed? That's the takeaway there?
I guess. It'd be nice if they were, because BYU has, they don't play on Sundays. It's hard to figure out where to put them in the bracket. If they're a 1, it's easy. They could be the 1 in the West, and they get to choose their region and all that. But BYU is always the bracketology nightmare for that seeding reason.
Kerry, so outside of the net rankings, just in the early season, we're 7-8 games in for most teams.
Mm-hmm.
Who has impressed you the most so far in the early season?
Man, that's a good question. I would say Baylor, from a kind of a surprise impressed perspective. I mean, they lost 3 15-point per game scorers in Keontae George, Adam Flagler, and LJ Cryer, who transferred to Houston, and they're even better on offense. I think KenPom, their adjusted efficiency on offense, they're slightly better than last year when they were like number 2 in the nation. They got these transfers in Jaden Nunn and Ray J. Dennis, obviously the freshmen, Jacoby Walter and Yves Misi, but man, it is working for them. But certainly they are following that blueprint of beating the crap out of bad teams. They play Michigan State and Duke later this month. That's when we'll really get a sense of how good they might be.
Kerry, on the other side of that coin, are you looking at any teams that you expected to be maybe a little bit better this year that have taken some early losses that don't make a ton of sense to you?
Definitely Michigan State and Duke, who played each other, and Duke won that game. So I guess they have the upper hand there in this little debate. But I mean, certainly nobody thought Michigan State was going to lose to James Madison. And both of those teams, I think when they played in the Champions Classic, Michigan State, all 5 of their starters were like key players on the team last year. Duke had 4 returning starters. Like, those are the teams you expect to be good early in the season. Like, they shouldn't be going through, early growing pains, because they've already grown last year, right? So surprising to see them both with 3 early losses. Duke, particularly with that loss at Georgia Tech. I know Tyrese Proctor got hurt early in the game. They're still figuring out what to do with Mark Mitchell, but they've got some issues for sure.
What do you make? And I know they're all not bad losses at all, but what do you make out of 3-loss Tennessee so far?
Yeah, that's a tough team. I was at a bracket came out today, and looking through all the metrics and stuff, like, they should be a solid 3 seed based on their predictives, and they had a nice road win over Wisconsin. Like you said, the losses weren't bad at all, but I don't know if I believe in this team at all, and I never believe in Tennessee and Rick Barnes. So
that's totally fair.
At this point in the season. So yeah, to give up 100 points to North Carolina was just shocking. Even though they came back, made it interesting. They decided to play some defense in the second half, but they don't have a front court. Like, they lost their 3 big men from last year, so it's kind of like Jonas Adu or bust. And Dalton Knecht is a great scorer, but I don't know if he fits that defensive DNA that they need. And I don't know what came of his little ankle injury there against North Carolina. I don't know if he's playing against George Mason tonight or what, but I feel like they're missing something. And for KenPom to be pretty much a stickler on them being a top 10 team is a little bit surprising.
We're talking with Kerry Miller of the Bleacher Report. Kerry, you mentioned KenPom a couple times there. Do you find that early season that's a better gauge of kind of where teams are, or is that just kind of another tool that you use? Because it's something I look at a lot for the adjusted offense and adjusted defense, especially. I'm just, how do you use it when you're evaluating teams?
Yeah, I have a KenPom addiction.
Hey, you and me both, man. You and me both.
15 KenPom tabs open. kind of changes over the course of the season. And I think even, the creators of the net would tell you that, like, it's supposed to be accurate on Selection Sunday, not 3 weeks before Christmas. But
sure.
For doing brackets, I combine a bunch of different predictive metrics like Ken Palm, Bart Torvik, Evan Maya, Hazelmetrics, and just like, I don't just like combine them and then spit out a consensus and that's what it is. But that's kind of like the baseline that I use, and they all still have preseason data baked in, which I'm aware of. I try to not let that sway what I'm going to do. I'm not a slave to the rankings, but I think they're certainly more. Ken Palm is a better gauge of how good a team is than I think the net rankings and certainly than the AP rankings.
Kerry, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Creighton Blue Jays. Obviously took that loss to Colorado State. Not a bad loss in terms of the opponent, kind of a bad loss in terms of how it looked maybe. What are your thoughts on Creighton early in the season and maybe in comparison to the team that made the Elite Eight run last year?
Yeah, I do not understand what happened in that game against Colorado State.
I'm not sure any of us do, to be honest.
I know it was 4 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day. They may have had their turkey before the meal because they looked all sorts of sluggish, but they are incredibly good around the perimeter. I think they're making almost 3 times as many 3-pointers as they're allowing, which is just absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they've always been a great 3-point shooting team, but what they're doing on defense right now is kind of ridiculous. The way they just completely shut down Nebraska's 3-point game, the first half of that game was pretty incredible. So I'm not in any way alarmed by that. Like you said, it was a significant margin, but Colorado State is pretty good, at least thus far. So I'm not alarmed by that at all. I think they are, they were supposed to be a top 10 team. I think they're still there. It still feels like a 3-horse race between them and Connecticut and Marquette for, who's going to be the best in the Big East this year.
Have any of those 3 teams created any separation for you at all, or is it that's the top tier in the Big East and then everybody else you can start having a conversation about after that?
I think, if I had to pick, I'd say Connecticut has a slight leg up. They almost won at Kansas, even without Stephon Castle. I think he's supposed to come back tonight against North Carolina. Their star freshman's been out for a couple of weeks, but I think they've proven that they're every bit as good as they were last year. I think both, certainly Marquette has some question marks in terms of what they're going to be in the front court outside of Iguodaro. But man, watching Sean Jones and Cam Jones play together with Tyler Kolek, that Marquette might be the most entertaining team in the country. I don't know if they're going to be the best team though.
Kerry, we appreciate your time. I'm sure we will try and catch up with you again as the season progresses, even though you did have that UConn take that, maybe I don't love, but that's okay. I know I have been super impressed by UConn as well, because I thought they might take a step back with losing those 3 guys from last year's championship team, but I agree with you there. So, Kerry, thank you so much, and we will talk to you again soon.
You got to take care, guys.
That's Kerry Miller of Bleacher Report, covers college basketball. Want to tell you about our friends at Dingman's Collision Center real quick. 4 great Omaha area locations. They have been first place Best of Omaha for 18 years running, family owned and operated. They've got the latest technology that they invest in. They also invest in the community with their give back program on every car repair. Go check out dingmans.com for more. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio, covering Nebraska football and recruiting for 24/7 sports. Here is Mike J. Schaefer.
Yeah, that's a grown-ass man right there.
Mike Schaefer.
I don't know. There could be bacon involved.
Mike Schaefer.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank Brian Edwards for me.
Here is Mike Schaefer.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla, Connor Kavulak here with me. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. And for this third hour, we are on KFOR in Lincoln. Welcome to all our Lincoln listeners. You can also check us out on YouTube, where the comments have been off and popping today. Appreciate everybody listening on YouTube and Twitter. We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by our guy, Mike J. Schaefer of Husker 24/7. Schaefer, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, not a lot. How we doing up in Omaha today?
Oh, just living the dream, having a good time. Love being here in Omaha. It's a joy. We're just doing great.
Yeah, it's a great day.
It's good.
What's so funny? You don't believe we're having a great time?
I always have a great time when I'm up in Omaha. So
it's true. You need to come and actually hang out with me when you're in Omaha sometime.
We just did like a couple weeks ago.
I mean, kind of. You were talking to Jack the whole time.
That's not true.
Getting a little jealous?
It was a little true. I mean, I came over to say hi to you guys, and you're like, we're talking about fantasy football. And I was like, all right, I'll see you guys later.
It was important. I ended up beating him later in the weekend. It crushed his spirit, which is anyone who's ever met Jack Mitchell. That's your ultimate goal upon meeting him, is you just want to go crush his spirit.
It's also not that hard to do. I feel like
that's why it's so much fun. It gets, that he's just going to keep coming back. It's like one of those, inflatable things you see along the highway for car dealerships. Like he's just going to be all over the place and full of energy, and you always know that it's going to just be right back the next day.
I thought maybe the analogy I would have gone for was Charlie Brown win the football, and you're loose. Just keep pulling the football away from him. My family watches the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving and Christmas things every year, so
as you should, as everyone should.
Classics.
Yeah, it's a national pastime, I think, is watching Charlie Brown. Yeah, everybody, Bo. Schaefer, let's talk a little bit of transfer portal. I'm sure you haven't talked about that at all. So this is a very unique and interesting topic idea that you
great poll. Great poll.
I'm sure you've never heard of before. I'm very creative and clever that way. So there's been a few names that we've heard Nebraska tied to, at least in conversation. Will Howard, which I think is a reach at best. Sam Levitt and Blake Shapen. Out of those three guys, which do you think are even a little bit realistic, and which do any of those three guys, I mean, I'm sure Will Howard does, like, get you excited about Nebraska's quarterback room for next year?
They're all sort of unique in an entirely different way. Like, it's like they just went and they took one from three different, buckets basically of different types of quarterbacks here, which makes it sort of interesting to discuss all of them in the abstract. With Will Howard, I think he's a good enough college quarterback. My one kind of concern is that he was blessed to be playing with a really great running game at Kansas State the entire time. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the best wide receivers. I feel like you're going to take a step down in both of those situations at Nebraska. And so it just puts a lot more pressure on Will Howard. And I wonder, like, if you're going to invest, do you really feel like you're one piece away in your quarterback without necessarily having the other, complementary pieces? Maybe Will Howard's job is to develop those guys into complementary pieces. That would be the counter argument there. With Blake Shapen, I guess it's kind of a question of, is this just because of, comfort, or do you really view this as a guy that's going to be healthy, going to be available to give you, you want 12 games, obviously. And so I'm curious on that one. And then, Sam Levitt just feels like an upside bet, someone that, was a 4-star in last year's recruiting class, a big athletic kid, wants to be, developed as a passer, but has the ability to run a little bit. So it allows you to retain that in the offense, but you can try to build around his arm. The interesting thing is he was the one that barely played in the game against Nebraska, but he did have the bounce pass that went for the touchdown. So, they're all like really unique. I guess I think their best shot is probably Shapen. It'd probably go Shapen, Levitt, Howard. I mean, but that also might be the order of the interest from other programs. Like, Shapen might be the most available of those three too. And that might be why it seems like Nebraska could end up with them. I don't know what his market necessarily is because of the injuries. And it's just the way that Baylor was down this year, it creates a perception that probably chases some off from him as well.
So with the QBs you listed, you mentioned that, we're going to need those complementary pieces. We need that running game. We need those receivers. Where do you see the biggest room for improvement in those rooms to help those QBs kind of get into that level of success that we need out of them?
Well, I don't know. Without outside additions, like if they don't go get a running back out of the portal or a freshman running back that can push right away, I don't know how confident I can feel in Nebraska's running game. I mean, I think Emmett Johnson is a fine piece, but I feel like Nebraska needs to move beyond fine. I mean, if you just go back to when they started missing bowl games and you look at their running backs in that stretch, Nebraska has not been particularly good in the running back room, and they haven't, they have 1,000-yard season to show for it in that entire time. So that kind of speaks to itself. I would think that you should also be looking hard in the portal for a running back. And then at wide receiver, I think that one's trickier because you don't want to stunt any development growth that you could get from Jalen Lloyd, and they like Demetrius Bell and Malachi Coleman and Jaden Doss. So if you can find another younger wide receiver that has a couple years of eligibility, that maybe has a little more experience, that would be a good route to go potentially at wide receiver to just kind of add to that group without necessarily taking away from it too, because I think that you want to give those guys all the reps and all the opportunity they can get in the spring. You might just want another, veteran piece to be there alongside as well. I don't know that Marcus Washington's going to get that waiver. I don't know that Isaiah Garcia Castaneda needs a medical hardship to play another year. So I'm curious what they end up doing at wide receiver as well.
Schaefer, have you been surprised at all about the I guess interest in Will Howard. Not that people want him, but it seems like the way people are talking about Will Howard, he would be putting up like Dylan Gabriel or Cam Ward numbers. And he's a really good player from a really solid program, but I don't know. I guess I've been a little taken aback, by the fact that people seem to think that he is arguably the best quarterback on the market before Gabriel went on yesterday. Like, have you been surprised at all by the reaction to him in the portal?
No, not necessarily. I think that a lot of people associate him with the Kansas State run last year, and then Kansas State's been solid, like you said, these last 2 years. I think that he has kind of the general traits that people want. I mean, you can look at his numbers and you can try to extrapolate those, and you would certainly think that if you put that on Nebraska's roster, they could have won more games last year.
Sure.
But that's kind of the thing that I think is a fallacy in all of this, is everyone's going to take the quarterback and put him in last year's situation, but that's not what it's going to be. You're going to have different players. You're going to have different opponents. Oh, that's what's waiting for you in 2024. And I just don't know that Nebraska has enough on offense to just be one piece away. And so I don't know that that just Will Howard alone changes the outlook for Nebraska significantly for 2024. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm surprised that there's this much fervor, but at the same time, when Lincoln Riley's flying out there, when Notre Dame, Will Howard was the number one guy for them until Riley Leonard was in the portal. I mean, it just seems like these prestige programs have really valued Will Howard, so then it would trickle down to the fans with the way that it's going to get covered.
Yeah, I guess it's the prestige programs that seem to be coveting him. That surprises me a little bit.
I think he's just a really safe, comes from a good program. Like I think he's also transferable, where you could probably put him in most offenses and it's going to be fine. I mean, I wouldn't put him in what like Liberty tries to do. That wouldn't look very good, but I mean, for the most part, he's going to fit what Notre Dame or USC or these places want to do. And I think that they might also view him as a little bit more cost effective in some cases too.
Is there a quarterback that we haven't talked about yet, or that maybe you've heard could have some interest in Nebraska, or Nebraska could have some interest in them?
Not yet. I mean, we'll see kind of who all gets into the portal throughout the next sort of couple weeks. That's the thing that's interesting, is I don't know how quick Nebraska is going to move on everything, because there's going to be these shifts, right? Like when William Howard goes off the board, that takes a team away. When, all these other places like Minnesota getting their quarterback takes a team away. And then you still have teams that are finishing out bowl seasons, teams that are finishing out playoff. Like, there's going to be a whole list of players that are going to go in January that are also going to be somewhat interesting to this program as well. And so it's just a matter of, if you think you have the guy right now, you move forward on it. But it also doesn't hurt you to be patient. And I look at a guy like Sam Levitt, and I don't know that he's going to make a fast decision either. And if Nebraska is hoping to take two quarterbacks, are you hoping that you can convince a guy like that you are totally fine taking two quarterbacks and he's still going to have an opportunity? And then do you take that commitment before you get the second quarterback? But there's kind of a tricky nature to all of this. And unless you're slam dunk yes on somebody, and I don't know that other than maybe Will Howard, they would be, it might behoove them to slow play it a little.
Schaefer, at the some of the other positions, I know we talked about running back and obviously some wide receiver. Do you look anywhere like defensively, maybe linebacker, where they might want to add some pieces, or do you think they like the guys they already have in the building there?
I think it is a combination. I mean, if you can find the right sort of fit for you at linebacker, somebody that could come in, I think ideally it'd be someone that has multi-years of eligibility. I don't know that they are going to be gunning necessarily to get a one and done. Now, if it's a good depth piece, a thing like that, if it's a guy moving up from the FCS to the FBS level and it's not going to necessarily cost you much of anything, or you could do a cost of attendance scholarship, if you will, they might have interest in that. But I think if you could find, a younger couple-year middle linebacker to help paper over an area where you're thin, I mean, Makai Bayer, and if John Bullock walked. Nick Henrich is gone. Luke Reimer is gone. I mean, you've got a kind of a thin spot there at middle linebacker, and so I'll be very interested, who they sort of use this spring, but also if we see a couple names pop up again, more from the transfer portal market than true freshmen, because I think you need somebody that can help you out next year.
Schaefer, this is a super weird question and nothing to do with Nebraska, really. Do you know, is there rules around with the transfer portal? If a guy were to enroll basically immediately in like a winter session or whatever, could they theoretically play in a bowl game?
I don't think so. I think the way that it works is that their status for that team is only available at the start of the second semester for the new program.
Okay.
Does that make they can be there earlier for the workouts and stuff, but essentially like it's after a semester break. Now I don't know how that works with the quarter system people.
Right.
But
yeah.
I know this was an effort to combat before the season where if a guy transferred in August, he would end up on like this happened with Nebraska with Tristan Gebbia and Oregon State. That people were leaving and then able to join programs that were on the quarter system because they hadn't started school yet. So I think they were trying to do it to where when you enter the portal, when you go in this session as it just now open, you are not available to play again until the start of the next session. So that is my understanding of it. Now there could be some sort of loophole in there. They're pretty good at leaving those out there, but you just got to find the right person to expose it.
Because I just thought it would be a little funny if, with the whole Florida State situation, if they were to find a quarterback and be like, hey, we're going to play with a quarterback in January, whatever, would have been a little amusing for me. So that's my brain goes.
Like Caleb Williams is just like playing for Florida State.
Yeah, he does I don't know if he's graduated, but yeah, somebody like that. They're like, hey, Will Howard's at Florida State now, or Cam Ward. Cam Ward's been rumored at Florida State. Be like, hey, Cam Ward's at Florida State now. He actually could play in the playoffs, so put us in. If they had. But anyway, back to Nebraska. Out of the transfer portal into recruiting. I know that we sometimes forget about the high school recruiting at this part of the year because of the transfer portal, but I know you keep your ear to the ground there as well. Obviously the Grant Bricks commitment was huge. They had a 2025 commitment as well. CJ Simon, is that the name?
Yeah, CJ Simon. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was escaping me for some reason. I kept wanting to say Carly Simon. I knew that wasn't it.
You're so vain.
Is there any recruiting news that we need to be kept up to date on?
Well, on CJ Simon, I think he's an interesting get out of Oklahoma. I mean, he's a little bit of a kind of a tweener wide receiver. You're going to use him in the slot. You're going to get him the ball on end arounds and reverses and kind of let his quickness come to roost. I know that for some people, they're worried that he may not be fast enough. I watched him in one-on-ones down in Kansas City, and he was at an Under Armour event. That's when I first took notice of him, and then found out Nebraska was recruiting him, and it kind of took off from there. But he's just really quick. I think he's shifty. It's hard for people to stay in front of. I think he could be kind of a unique asset down the line, and he's someone I think Nebraska really likes as a punt returner, kick returner too. But that's 2025, so he's a little ways away as CJ Simon. Right now, here's the problem. There is definitely a name that you need to know of. The problem is I am not going to be able to pronounce the name, and he is a really interesting story. So I don't want to not discuss this. But I'm going to try to pull up the story from Brunt's, and maybe there's a pronunciation or something in there.
Let's give it a shot here. Let's do our best.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. I found it. All right. So there's an offensive lineman out in New Jersey, same school as Mekhi Bayer, defensive lineman. Murad Watson. I think it's Murad. I don't know. I hate being wrong with people's names.
I was expecting it to be way worse than that.
Well, it seemed worse in my head. Just go with that.
Okay. So you're just building it up. Okay, that's fine.
he committed to Kent State yesterday afternoon, but after he committed, Power 5 schools started offering him, and now he is taking an official visit to Rutgers this upcoming weekend, and then an official visit to Nebraska the following weekend. So he, I think he's very interested in both of those schools. Obviously, Rutgers is right there in New Jersey, but Nebraska with Mekhi Bayer, I think, has a good shot with him. This is a guy who Bruns was just raving about his film. He said it's really fun. He's basically a very violent defensive lineman. Nebraska obviously had to cut loose Carlin Jones because he is not going to sign until February, and their numbers are sort of a mess, to say the least. So Nebraska needed more assurity than that. And this could be a replacement here in Murad Watson. I would invite people to go watch that film. Like I said, it's violent and it's fun. So that's what people want out of their defensive players.
Yeah, and also their movies a lot of the time. Schaefer, so you brought up the Carlin Jones things. I'm glad you did, because so it was a situation where he wanted to wait until the spring to make his decision, right? The February, whatever. So Nebraska technically did cut him loose, right? Because they didn't want to wait on that.
That's what he's telling people. So,
okay.
I mean,
there was still a chance. There's still a chance he could have been at Nebraska, but because of the added ambiguity of waiting, they didn't want to be in that situation. Yes. Is that a fair assessment?
Without being able to answer fully for them, this would be my read on this situation. Carlin Jones didn't want to give up his commitment to Nebraska because he's not assured to have a spot at Ohio State, because he still has to take his official visit that's now been pushed back a couple times. And he needs to leave himself an option. Nebraska would still be that option. Nebraska doesn't want to be the bridesmaid and just hold on to.
They didn't want to be the safety school. Yeah.
They're Carlin Jones. And then in the meantime, USC offers anyway. So it's not like he's not going to have opportunities. But Nebraska is basically, I think they liked him a lot. I think he liked Nebraska just fine. But he's, and he told me this when Ohio State offered, he has to explore what those the alternatives are.
Sure.
Like he has to let himself know if he's making the right decision. And I have nothing but respect for that. And I think Nebraska basically said the same thing. Like, we appreciate it. We think you're going to be great, but we can't guarantee you a spot. And so we've got to move forward. And that's ultimately what happened. And that's a guy that also tells you how good they feel about their defensive line, by the way.
Well, I was going to ask.
They can take a guy where it's like, I would put him in my Super Six. Like, that's how good this isn't like a, sometimes when Nebraska loses a commit, it's like, yeah, he wasn't going to be that good anyways. No, this was I feel like Carlin Jones was one of their 6 best commits. But they just, numbers are where they are, and I think they are comfortable. If guys in the class want to look around, then they're not going to wait on them. And that's sort of where they're at.
How much of that to you from the Nebraska perspective, and I'm asking you to, trying to play armchair psychologist a little bit here, which, if you know anything about people that work in sports, like, we're definitely qualified for that. How much of it do you think from Nebraska standpoint was the, hey, we want guys that really, really want to be here, versus we like what we have in the room, this isn't a huge position of need for us? Like, were both of those things factors in your mind?
Yeah, I think they were both factors, and I think a lot of it just comes down to, we don't need to do we don't need to put ourselves in a situation where we're waiting on one person that we're not even sure we're going to get either. So I think some of it was that, and it was basically like, okay, we don't need to spend the capital, the investment on this. We don't want to have to chase it down. And our numbers are weird, and we can't wait until February, which tells me that they're not going to. I mean, I think they have a couple more high school guys that they're looking at here, and that's largely going to be over. They're going to have to figure out their total portal number, and then we're going to have to start seeing some names from Nebraska's end go into the portal too, because there needs to be more, there needs to be more room, quite frankly.
You expect those names to come out like in this early period, or more in the spring? Like, I know we expect Jeff Sims to go in the spring once his graduation, or once he graduates and is able to move on again. Like, do you expect more to be in the spring where guys know, hey, I'm probably not in line to get much playing time here? Or do you still think there might be some attrition in this first period as well?
I definitely think there's going to be some attrition in this first period, because for some of these guys, now might be a better opportunity for them than the spring would. I mean, I just think you have to kind of weigh it as to where you can be more valuable. You know, and a lot of schools are going to have spots that are pretty filled up. And especially right now where we're getting to the tail end of this extra COVID year. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that you're going to have a lot of, you know, full spots or already graduated grad transfers or multi-transfers or whatever you want to call them. I would think that you have to be somewhat judicious. Like if you have some schools that you're interested in and they have openings, you might want to look now. It depends on where you want to go too. I mean, if you're not hell bent on trying to get to another Power 5, then maybe you do wait. And you give yourself some spring footage to give some FCS schools or things of that nature. So I think there's always an interesting conversation for every athlete as to when it makes the most sense for them to go into the portal.
That's Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, we appreciate your time as always. Try to get a little bit of sleep as we get through this portal and recruiting season. I know it's one of the busiest times of year for you, so we definitely appreciate you hanging out with us for a little bit. Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, guys. We will talk again next week, Schaefer. That is Mike J. Schaefer, Husker 24/7. We will be back with some Hurrdat Hot Seat here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Connor Kavulak is here with me from the NBNR podcast. Make sure you check out what those guys are doing. Fun stuff over there. We are live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. During the break, Connor just realized how good Grayson McCall is. Really, really good.
Yeah, no.
Stupid good.
Those career stats are insane. 11,000 yards, 160 total TD passes. Unreal. Unreasonably good.
Yes, he is. Is my mic gone, Shane? What happened there? We good?
No, you're good.
Okay.
I can hear you.
I got very quiet all of a sudden, in my ears at least. Yeah, he is an unbelievably productive quarterback. Over 10,000 yards passing for his career, 88-14 touchdown to interception ratio passing. I don't know if you know, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard so.
That'll work. And almost 10 yards per attempt passing, which is crazy good. Also a terrific decision maker with the offense that he's had and that he's run. He ran for over 500 yards as a freshman QB. That number's gone down as he's become a better passer. But really, really productive dude. That's the guy. If you're not going to get a Will Howard, if you're not going to get one of these higher end guys or a guy with multiple years at a higher end, like Kyle McCord could give you 2 years as a high end guy. That would be a really appealing option for me.
Absolutely.
Cam Ward, same way. I think Cam Ward has 2 years. I get these freaking COVID years mixed up so badly, but I think he's got 2 years available to him as well. You've got some of these younger guys that are available, but if you're going on let's say you get Sam Levitt as your young guy, Grayson McCall would be a perfect 1 year starter. Let Sam Levitt learn and develop as a passer a little bit, and then get him end up being the starter role. That would be honestly kind of my dream realistic scenario.
Yeah,
would be a Grayson McCall, Sam Levitt combo. I think he's a little bit better than Chapin. I think he's a lot better than Chapin.
Yeah.
But that type of role would be, I think, perfect for him.
Well, and both reasonable targets.
Yeah,
both
I think
McCall.
gettable. I think very gettable. And I think that's maybe what's the most appealing about it is I think it would be the right situation and a very gettable situation for both of those guys. But right now it is time for the Hurrdat Hot Seat. Today we are brought to you by Alumni Hall. We need to talk about all of our Husker fans that are on your shopping list. Santa's making his list, checking it twice. You need to make your list too, make it a little bit easier on Santa. He's going to Alumni Hall, and so should you. Alumni Hall is your one-stop shop to get all things Huskers, gifts for him, her, the kids, even the dog. They've got everything you could possibly want for everybody in your life. They've got 2 great stores in Lincoln, one in downtown on P Street, the other in South Point Pavilion. But me, I'm an online shopping kind of guy. You can also hit them up anytime at alumnihall.com. This week, get 20% off your Alumni Hall purchase with code UNL Holiday. All one word, no spaces. That's 20% off UNL Holiday at alumnihall.com. All right, time for the Hurrdat hot seat. As the guest, I will allow you to go first. You said you had some truly wild questions for me, so let's get it going.
Yeah, so you told me last night that you wanted
random.
Yeah, random, off the wall kind of stuff. So the first one, and this is how I judge a lot of people.
Okay.
What is your go-to chain pizza restaurant?
Ooh,
it's got to be chain.
Chain. So are we talking national chain?
Yes, national chain.
Okay. So my go-to now is probably Domino's.
That's the correct answer.
Because usually I have it delivered. If I'm going chain, I have it delivered.
Of course.
Domino's, I think, has the best delivery. And after they changed, I think it was like a decade ago, they changed everything.
Yeah.
Because before, not a Domino's fan at all. Did not think it was good. But I really enjoy the crispy thin crust now.
Yeah.
That's my jam. The garlic butter dipping sauce.
Correct again.
Very, very good. The stuffed cheesy bread, very, very good. So yeah, Domino's is my go-to there.
That is beautiful all the way around. The garlic butter is necessary. I don't care what you're getting, you have to get it.
Yeah, and it's a non-negotiable for me. I will say this is kind of like the creed of my pizza chain, not Domino's, the one I'm about to say next, is kind of the creed of my pizza chain love. Like, they're not my favorite band, but they're
up there.
I do love them, despite the fact that I know like they're not great music. It just hits me right.
Sure.
Little Caesars.
Okay. Again, great move. It's hot and it's ready.
And it's also, okay, it's partially a get what you pay for situation, but it's also better than you would expect for a $5 pizza.
100%.
Like, or I think it's $5.95 now. But
yeah, whatever.
It's still a great deal. I have got like a little bit of PTSD from CC's Pizza and those buffets for like $5. Comparatively,
Little Caesars wins.
Dominates. Like I would take Little Caesars over several other chains regardless of price. I do have a very special place in my heart for Little Caesars.
I get that 100%.
So I take it Domino's is yours as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, you're correct.
Fair enough. We're going to start with an easy one here for you.
Okay.
Andrew and I are going to do a Christmas movie bracket later in a couple weeks here.
Yes.
What is your favorite Christmas movie?
Ooh.
Let's start there. This is a two-parter.
That's tough. I want to say Elf, but I don't think that's it. I'm going to have to go the live action Grinch with Jim Carrey.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
I think I have to go live action Grinch.
That's a pretty good one. Is there an under the radar Christmas movie that we should be considering that you're afraid we might not?
Under the radar. I don't know. I think you have to go the original The Santa Claus. Tim Allen. Yeah.
That's a very good movie.
Yeah, and I think it flies under the radar just a little bit.
I think the other ones the sequels are what they are.
Yeah.
But, whatever. But The Santa Claus is a very solid take. I will accept The Santa Claus as tribute. All right, number 2, you're up.
All right, so this one's got a couple of, it's hypothetical, obviously, but it's got a couple of addendums.
Okay.
There is no lifelong injury here.
Okay.
What is the lowest amount of money you would step in the ring with primetime Mike Tyson for?
The lowest amount of money?
You're getting primetime, like 19, 20-year-old Mike Tyson.
And I'm not going to die.
No lasting damage.
You can guarantee I won't die and I won't have lasting damage.
Yeah, you still may have to go, get a jaw wired shut if he catches you really clean.
Sure, but after the jaw's wired shut, I'm not going to have like brain damage.
No,
I'll be able to eat. I'm not going to have to drink out of a straw for the rest of my life. So it could be let's put a 6-month cap on the injury.
Yeah.
Whatever the injury is, it could
6
be
months later, you're good.
Excruciating for 6 months, but after 6 months, you flick a switch, you're good to go.
Yes, 100%.
6 months of pain is a lot.
Yeah.
I'd probably do $1 million.
$1 million?
Is that low or high?
It's high you're not. I've seen a lot of people answer higher because this is one of my favorite questions.
No, it's a
good way to gauge people.
It's a good question. I mean, $1 million is a lot of money.
Yes.
And it's not like quit your job forever money, but if I'm not taking permanent no risk of permanent brain damage or death, I don't need change your life money.
That's true.
Like it's just nice chunk of change.
I need 6 months. Like
I could do, I can do my job in excruciating pain. For
Are
6
you
months.
stepping into the ring now with him, or
can I be also in my physical prime?
or at the time when he was in his physical prime, like 19?
No, that's what he said.
Yeah,
he's
in his
like
prime, when he's like
20-year-old
19 or
Mike Tyson.
20-year-old Mike Tyson.
But not 19 or 20-year-old today, 19 or 20-year-old 1990. So it's 1990 time period, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's like $3 million now. I mean,
Oh, he's talking about the money
today's
value.
money. In today's money.
Oh, yeah, today's money then.
Yeah. Am I in my prime physical condition, or am I now?
I'll let you go in your prime.
Okay. Yeah, definitely $1 million then.
Okay.
Like, listen, I'm not that I was anything special, but I was in better physical shape several years ago. I think $1 million.
I think that's
what's
fair.
your number?
I said 100,000.
That's pretty low.
It's very low.
Like that's pretty.
But like
low.
also, how many people get to say they stepped in a ring with Mike Tyson? So that lends its own value. I sell the rights, make a movie about it. Now I'm getting more money than I started with.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. 100,000 is not enough. I think I need $1 million.
I think I might have undervalued myself.
I think you
and
might.
I've been giving 100,000 as my answer for a very long time, and I really hope Mike does not hear about this. I call him Mike. We're on a first name basis.
You guys are cool like that. 100,000 seems low. I think you might need to reevaluate for inflation.
I think you might be right.
Because you're not getting a house for 100,000.
No,
you're not getting. You get a nice car for 100,000.
That's fair.
I don't know if that's worth it.
No.
I think you might need.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up the show here on a Tuesday. I'm Ravi Lulla, Connor Kavulak here with me. We are live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. Talking about the Christmas movies a little bit. Travis chimes in on the YouTube stream. Wonderful Life is trash. It absolutely bombed when it originally came out and only gained traction because it was literally free programming for networks to start airing in the 80s. I actually agree there. I don't think that's a good movie. I'm not a fan.
I'm going to side with that one too.
Yeah,
it's a good take.
First of all, terribly depressing.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's got very much like Pursuit of Happiness vibes, where it's like, hey, this movie is going to beat you down for 2 hours, and then there's 3 minutes of happiness.
Yeah, there's a small sliver.
No, thank you. Hard pass on that. I don't need it. I don't need any of that in my life. No, thank you. Terrific take on the It's a Wonderful Life, Travis. Moving back to the question about the Mike Tyson deal. Corey says, it might be hard for me to do a radio show with my jaw wired shut.
Oh, that's a good point.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
Might be a little muffled there in terms of getting that out there. But Travis said I could go with the Stephen Hawking computer voice, and that could be entertaining. So
I think that'd be very entertaining.
You might be fine. I'm just, the lasting damage, and it's not even the lasting, it's the damage that might come back on you in like 10 years. Because like you could just have something that pops up.
What do you think lasting damage means, Shane?
But I mean, you could be fine for like 7-8 years or whatever, but then you could just have something pop back up just because you've been hit by Mike Tyson.
Shane,
Mike Tyson.
Stop, Shane. The hypothetical is literally there's no long-term damage.
Yeah,
it is not a real situation. So stop trying to apply logic to an illogical question.
Yeah, I'm just saying you got to get at least 10 million.
After 6 months, it's like you never did it.
Yeah,
minus the money you got.
After 6 months, nothing happened. Like that's the rule. 1 million is plenty for that. I think I have talked young Connor here into 100,000 not being enough.
Yeah, no. The more we contextualize that, the more I realized I was super wrong.
Yeah, I think you have to at least buy a new house money.
Yeah, agreed.
Like that's
buying cash, walk
away.
Yeah,
just like I don't have a mortgage. I paid for this house in cash, whatever, boom.
And you could get money on the backside of that. You could sell the story. You could sell the book rights. You could have the 30 for 30. You could have whatever documentary
but
that
what
you
if you
want.
make a trash movie like It's a Wonderful Life? You don't make any money out of it.
Free network programming.
Yeah.
For the next 40 years.
People will remember my name.
Ken says Patrick Stewart narrating A Christmas Carol is the best rendition of that work. I'm actually a Muppet Christmas Carol guy.
I like that take too.
I love that.
But
movie.
I do love Patrick Stewart, so I will not. I won't hate on the Patrick Stewart. I won't hate on the Patrick Stewart take on Christmas Carol at all. All right, continuing on Hurrdat Hot Seat here. I believe it is. I don't know whose turn it is, but I'm going to go. All right, I've got a Would You Rather.
Oh.
For you, Connor.
Okay.
Would you rather get a tramp stamp of your own choosing? So whatever tattoo you want, but it has to be a tramp stamp. Okay. Or you can choose where on your body you get a tattoo, but I get to choose what it is. The thing that you get out of this for getting this tattoo, either situation, is that Nebraska wins 8 games next year.
If I do both, will you give me a natty?
I will not. I will not.
See, the easy answer, I think.
You just ask for a natural light?
Oh, gosh, no. Oh, no.
I'm really more of a Natter Day guy myself.
There you go.
I love a Natter Day.
If
If you came up with something at Nebraska Brewing Company comparable to a Natter Day, whew.
I've got seltzers. Those are kind of close.
No, how dare you?
They're kind of close.
No, sir. Dramatically different. I'm going to need you to work on that. Talk to the brewers.
All right, yeah.
I'll have a sit
I think
down.
they're listening right now. They might have just heard us.
Guys, if you could give me a Natter Day, figure something out for me that we can get a Natter Day flavored, like something in the neighborhood, not a seltzer.
Okay.
From Nebraska Brewing Company, like I will be the face of your new product. I don't know if that's appealing or not, but I volunteer
for whatever it's worth.
All right, so it has to be a tramp stamp, but you get to pick what it is, or you get to pick where the tattoo is, but I pick what the tattoo is.
I think I go the latter because I think you're too nice to do anything too offensive.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't do anything like vulgar.
Yeah,
it would not be flattering.
No, but is any tramp stamp flattering?
Well, no, but it's mostly covered most of the time.
Oh, not the way I am.
You go shirts off all the time?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of Pat McAfee vibes.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I think I got to go the latter. I'm going to let you pick what it is. But
Okay.
I'm gonna, wait, do I get to pick size too, or do you get to pick size?
No, I'll pick this. I get to pick the tattoo. You just get to pick location. But it would be like a normal size tattoo. Like
we're not talking like
no, I'm not doing like a
tattoo.
full back piece or anything. Like a normal-ish size tattoo.
Yeah, I think I got to run with that.
Okay.
I think that's easy. What about you? If you had to reverse that,
I think I might go tramp stamp.
That's probably a smart move.
Because I don't trust anyone else enough to pick what it is.
Yeah.
Because you could pick some bad stuff.
Oh, yeah. And again, I wouldn't go vulgar.
No, right. But like you could still.
I'm going to pick something ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think I go tramp stamp.
I'm getting like a 3x3 Ronald McDonald just for no reason.
Still,
you got to tell people the story of like, why do you have Ronald McDonald?
I feel like people would like make me get like a Nebraska ball tattoo or something.
Yeah.
And that would, and I'll go with
that's a smart move.
I'll go with the tramp stamp. I'll figure it out. All right. Your next question.
All right. From the Arc, you've got 10